Coming up on UGTV, Standing Committee Meetings of the Unified Government of Wyandotte County, Kansas City, Kansas. We begin with a meeting of the Public Works and Safety Standing Committee. This will be followed by the Administration and Human Services Standing Committee.
Of the meeting, and will the clerk call the roll, please?
Roll call. Roneman? Here. Philbrook?
Here.
Markley?
Here.
Kane? Here. Johnson?
Here.
Bynum?
Here. And I would like to welcome Commissioner McKiernan from District 2. He's joining in our meetings. He won't be voting, but he is welcome at the table for conversation and discussion. We have two revisions on tonight's agenda. Item 6 is a clerical error, which has been corrected to 3 ordinances instead of 2 ordinances for the motorized stand-up scooters and shared small vehicle programs. And then also item 12 has been added, which is the grant award from FEMA for Assistance to Firefighters Grant Program. The first order of business tonight is minutes from August 27. Is there a motion?
Move to approve.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. And the minutes are approved. We strap in, folks. We have 12 items under the committee agenda. Item 12, sorry. Item 1 is the Edward Byrne Memorial Justice Assistance Grant Award. Who is here? I believe Laura Cromwell, is that correct? Coming forward from the police department here to present the item. Here you go. Go right ahead.
Good evening. My name is Laura Cromwell, and I'm the professional fiscal assistant for the Kansas City, Kansas Police Department. Here with me tonight is Assistant Chief Pam Waldeck. On October 2nd, the police department received notification that our application for the fiscal year 18 Justice Assistance Grant was approved and accepted by the U.S. Department of Justice, and we are here to provide notification to the committee of this award. Our application, which was approved by Commission on September 13th, outlines plans to use the funding for the following projects: irritant gas mask filters for sworn personnel, equipment upgrades for the Special Operations Unit, and training materials for the Crisis Intervention Team. The grant award amount is $104,142 and does not require any match from the UG.
Move for approval. Second.
We have a motion and a second, although I think it's an information item.
That's okay.
And
We still want to approve it.
yeah, we do. We do actually want to approve it. We're very pleased. I'm sorry, your rank?
Oh, Assistant Chief.
Assistant Chief. Do you have any comments you want to add?
I don't.
Okay, thank you. We are very pleased. It's my understanding then that the grant's received and awarded.
Yes.
So, onward. Thank you so much. I do think you have a next item, though. Item 2 is Strategies for Policing Innovation Grant Award, and I'll pass it back to you.
Okay. Also on October 2nd, the police department was notified of the U.S. Department of Justice acceptance of our fiscal year 18 Strategies for Policing Innovation Grant application. The application for this particular grant was approved by Commission on May 31st. Once again, our presence here tonight is just simply to provide notification to the committee of this award. Funding in the amount of $700,000 will be used to compensate officers for overtime worked in multiple micro hotspot policing zones, as well as to purchase officer safety and investigative equipment. And once again, there is no UG match for this grant as well.
Information only and doubly awesome. Thank you so very much. Yep.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Item 3 is our annual request. This is annual approval of the county solid waste management plan. And we've got Kirk Souther and Jeff Fisher, and we'll have a brief update after the plan on just our waste management operations in general. So, gentlemen, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Each year, the KDHE has each county look at their solid waste plan and review it. We have done that on May 8th, and we look at the infrastructure to make sure if there's any changes. The major change we had in 2017 was that we added the recycling back at the Yard Waste Center, so it's now Yard Waste and Recycling Center. So I think that the minutes have been submitted to everyone.
In the packet. So what we're doing is, this is an approval item, and it's an approval of our annual solid waste plan. And what Kirk is bringing forward is, we have the plan in the packet. The major change or update is the recycling back at the Park Drive facility. Do I have that right?
Yes, we review the 2015 solid waste plan each year.
Okay.
That's what this is.
All right, so I would accept a motion to approve on this item.
Move to approve.
Second, but I have a question.
Yes, go ahead.
Before we go ahead. So on this, will you guys make this available on the UG website?
Yeah, we can do that.
Thank you. Yeah, well, yeah, I want this.
The plan and the, okay, excellent. All right, so we have a motion and a second on this approval. Could I have roll call on that?
Roll call. Groneman.
Aye.
Philbrook.
Aye.
Markley.
Aye.
Kane.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Bynum.
Aye. And then do you also have the update, the brief update? Okay, go right ahead.
Yes. Back in May, we started meeting weekly with waste management, with trash and recycling, and we were able to, I just wanted to bring some new data to everyone as far as the analyzing the trash trucks. You can see it's not a steady line. It goes from 69 to 60 to 67 to 69 to 64. And of course, your hours that each person is working changes according to the number of trucks they have on the street, from 62 to 65 hours a week, which is 12 to 13 hours a day for their employees. And this is the number of complaints that we've had by the month. In June, it was over 5,000. July was nearly 17,000. August, about 5,900. September, 1,300. And then through the middle of this month, 2,300. We came about 2 months ago and we're talking about ways that we thought we could help to improve services. This is just a little update. Waste Management now has digital access to the 311 system so that they can get complaints as we receive them, which has helped out a lot. At the last meeting, we talked about trash and recycling reroutes that would impact approximately 14,800 homes. We wanted to balance the number of homes per day because one day there's 2,500 more homes for them to pick up than another day. This should increase this will increase the number of trucks, reduce the hours that their employees work, and reduce the number of houses that they pick up. We did make a presentation to Livable Neighborhoods last month. What we plan are just getting a hold of the people that will be impacted with postcards 4 and 2 weeks ahead of time, and the postcards are tentatively done. They're ready. We've been working on the BPU list, and I believe that's all in place. At this point in time, we're just working with Waste Management to make sure that they can secure the sufficient workforce to be able to implement what we have planned here. And the estimated time frame that we have right now is probably the messaging sometime in December, and hopefully a rollout in the after the first of the year.
Okay. Questions or comments? Anyone? We know that it'll be part of a ongoing effort for continued service improvement, and this is one piece of the puzzle. And
Yes.
I do think that you have the data to show that, you know, even though it'll be something for people to get used to having a new trash day, the goal is service improvement. So
Correct.
we'll keep bringing that home. Commissioner Johnson.
Thank you. Slide 2 that says analyzing hours per week. How do we understand that? Is it the average hour per person, or how am I supposed to understand this?
That's the average hour per individual.
Per person?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because they give us a end time that they finish their day, so we just have to approximate that.
Okay, so the average hour thus far this month per person is 64 hours per week?
Yeah.
I'm just trying to analyze this just in a little bit of time that we've had this. It looks like the number of complaints seems to coalesce with the number of hours worked per week. Seems like the more hours that they work per week, more complaints we get. Am I interpreting that right?
Well, I think the big factor is the trucks.
Number of trucks.
The number of trucks they have impacts everything.
So the more trucks, then the more complaints. Okay.
And in the longer hours they have to work.
So the combination of both of them. Okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah.
All
So
right. Thank you.
just to stop there for a minute, though, it's a workforce issue. So if they're working 60 and 65 hours a week, it's because there's not enough people
Right.
to put more trucks out. And so therefore, that worker is working 60, 64 hours. So that's part of what we're trying to resolve by one of the tactics of changing the pickup days. Even that out across the week, might have fewer hours worked, but more people working, and therefore more trucks out picking up. Okay.
Correct.
Yeah, Commissioner Philbrook.
So they have some of the same problems everybody else does that needs a CDL driver. And so they have to compete for those CDL drivers as well. And there's a big shortage in that. And so comparison, I don't know how their pay runs in comparison to other drivers. So I'm sure that's part of their problem too.
All right, any other questions or comments on this item? If not, gentlemen, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm sure we'll hear from you again very soon. Next, we have an ordinance granting to MCI Metro Access Transmission Services Corp. Fiber optic cable franchise, and we have Mr. Howes here to present the item.
Evening, Commissioners. I'll just speak briefly, and then I'll hand it over to Daniel Coun from the legal office, who's negotiated the agreement. Basically, this is a franchise ordinance. It's the first one to be negotiated under the changes in the franchise ordinance that was made earlier this spring and adopted by the Commission. What in the fact sheet we laid out with the to the Commission, just a refresh on that. What some of the changes that requires, it updated our ordinance around restoration and tightened up the requirements around restoring damages to cuts in the right-of-way. That was the first part of the revised ordinance changes that were made. It also, in the franchise ordinance, focused on utilizing existing conduit in the ground first before others can dig up the right-of-way. And it also put in there the ability for the UG to also run alongside or put our own conduit in when somebody else is making a run under this franchise agreement. So those are some of the changes that were adopted as part of the franchise updates as well. So with that, I'll turn it over to Dan to talk specifically about this agreement, and see if there's any questions.
Thank you. Good evening. This agreement in particular does allow MCI Metro Access Transmission, which is a subsidiary of Verizon, to more or less install and upgrade their facilities that should provide better wireless services for its customers. We believe the ultimate goal is that it would provide 5G technology. Of course, that's in the future. Specifically, this ordinance would allow for a 5% receipts from gross revenue from MCI Metro, and it would span 10 years with an auto renewal for an additional 10 years.
Questions or comments? Commissioner Philbrook.
Yeah, so I saw this little cute, in quotes, street furniture.
Yes.
You want to talk to me a little bit about some of the locations that we would allow?
Well, I believe that's more technical. I'd defer to Alan on that.
Sorry, I'm just.
It's kind of structures in the right-of-way is really sort of it's a term of art for that. So I'm trying to think of, it could be.
So I don't want to stand still very long. So are there any particular, I guess I don't know what all this new technology looks like. So could you give the public an idea of what some of this stuff might look like that you're talking about?
Sure, and it's basically 5G is the next generation of wireless cellular communication. It operates at a higher frequency. It allows for much greater data transmission over shorter distances, and so there is a build-out underway. Sort of starting nationwide, and telecommunications companies are putting these agreements in place that allow them to put the infrastructure in to support that. And really, you need a fiber backbone to carry the data from place to place within. So you've got a node on a pole and another node on another pole a quarter mile away. You need to be able to transmit across that. So there's a separate agreement, a pole attachment agreement that is negotiated with the carriers. That is the sort of physical equipment that you see maybe hanging off of a street pole, a street light. This agreement really focuses more on the underground transmission within the right-of-way.
Having said that, then, knowing that we're working on Leavenworth Road, are we going to need to worry about anything being torn up in the near future to be putting anything more underground?
I don't believe that's the case.
Just going to ask because I know that's a question I'm going to get. Okay.
And part of the change to the franchise ordinance, again, required that if there's existing conduit in there, that's where they go first. And so if part of the Leavenworth Road work, conduit was put into place as part of that work. So conduit exists in there for the UG's use, and that can also be utilized or leased out to providers.
But it's already present, so it's not like you're tearing anything up. So.
Okay.
Thank you.
Commissioner Johnson.
Thank you. Verizon, are they the only ones that provide this type of service, or was this a situation where we contract or we received RFPs and looked at the best bid for this?
This was Verizon coming to us saying, we want to access your right-of-way.
Okay, coming to us. And so by them providing that, and this is an elementary question, but just need to try to understand this better, regardless of what the user has or the person using this, it doesn't have anything to do with what I want to call consumers. This is just more or less for municipal access.
Correct, and Dan can speak to this as well. There's a specific reference in the agreement that this is not cable service. This is not sort of direct to consumer
Right. Okay.
service.
That's what I want to get understanding of.
Okay, any more questions or comments? If not, I would take a motion to approve this item.
So move.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Could we have roll call?
Roll call. Groneman. Aye. Philbrook.
Aye.
Markley.
Aye.
Kane. Johnson.
Aye.
Bynum.
Aye, and that motion passes. Thank you. Our next item is an ordinance requesting revisions regarding speed limits in residential areas and parks. We have Lydiana LeBoy here with Traffic Engineering to present the item. And whenever you're ready is fine.
Well, thank you. I'll just give you the quick why we're here, and then I'm going to let Lydiana get into that, a little presentation. But As we were going through the traffic management plan earlier this year, and I noticed we had a speed limit of 30 in our residential. I noted that. We've done the research to help with legal. Best practices in the metro is 25, and for safety and other reasons, that's our recommendation tonight, but I'm gonna let Lydiana give you a little more detail.
I'm trying to get our presentation on the board. 1 second.
Commissioner McKiernan, can you help us with IT?
Get it over. Hold it over. We're just gonna hold it over.
I'll descend on her. She's get rid of the multiple periods. It's not treating it. Windows isn't recognizing it as a PowerPoint.
Ms. Brown, I've got a point of order question. While we solve our tech problem, must we wait or can we juggle our agenda?
I believe we can juggle the agenda, Commissioner.
Well, while they're trying to
Shall
figure that
we-
out, let's move on to number 6.
Yeah, I would like to, feel free, please continue to, try to work with your technology, but is Mr. Waters here? Why don't you come forward on item 6? So we are going to hold item 5. We really do want to see that presentation on the proposal for the speed limits, but while we work on that, let's hear from item 6. It's 3 ordinances regarding motorized stand-up scooters and shared small vehicle programs, and associated related traffic rules and regulations. So, Mr. Waters, and we have Zach Flanders here from Planning.
Yes.
Why don't you go ahead and present this item for us?
Thank you, Commissioner. We actually have a presentation as well, so I can just go ahead and get started, though. Really what we're here to talk about are motorized scooters and electric-assisted bicycles. You may have already seen these motorized scooters in Kansas City, Missouri. They have kind of a test program going on right now. Companies such as Bird and Lime have already started. What these vehicles really allow are a low-cost first mile and last mile transportation option. You can imagine if someone lives within about a mile of their work and they wanted to jump on one of these outside of their apartment, ride it to work, or maybe if you take a bus to a bus stop but it doesn't quite get you where you want to go, you can take the bus and then ride one of these scooters the last mile. There we go. The last mile to your work. Couple of other examples, just I kind of looked up online. If you think about if you lived at Village West Apartments and wanted to go to the Sporting KC game, that's about a mile. If you're at City Hall and you wanted to go to 7th and Central, that's Slaps or Split Log Coffee, that's about a mile. And so, those kind of short distance trips are what these specialize in. Let's see here. So really how it works is most riders will use their phone. There's an app and they have GPS responders on them, and you find the vehicles, they show where they are, just like you're looking at a Google map. You walk up to the device, use your smartphone to activate it, and like it says there, they're about $1 to activate it and then 15 cents per minute after that. What's different about these is that charging stations are not required. And so what this means is that it will require the use of the unified government's right-of-way, because you don't have dedicated stations set up in specific places. You drive to wherever you want to go and then place it there. And how it works is that the companies hire people to go and pick these up every night. They take them home, they charge them, and then they redeploy them in the morning to the locations that they think will be used the most.
On that, just on that item right there.
Yeah.
So these scooters, once charged all night, will hold that charge all day?
I believe so, yes. I mean, I don't know how long, if it's used the entire day, it may test the limit, but they're designed to go most of the day.
Okay, keep going.
So what that means is that, we're going to see these parked on sidewalks. And so you have to have some rules and regulations. And this is going to take some education on the part of the public about where you can park and where you can park. You're supposed to park them on the sidewalk or street or in a bike rack, and be sure not to block any pedestrian traffic, fire hydrants, and other street furniture, as we talked about. So here's a couple of pictures of examples of how you should park them: upright and next to the curb, so that they're available for the next user to easily pick up. Here are some examples of how not to park them: blocking the sidewalk, just strewn on the ground, blocking the entrances to buildings. We have seen some kind of pushback in some cities, because when these first came out, the picture on the left especially is kind of how people just kind of, how you saw them just kind of leaving them anywhere. I think as these get used more, hopefully, again, and as there's kind of a public education campaign, that people will understand where they should leave them and how they should leave them. So for the most part, we've tried to treat these scooters like bicycles whenever possible, because we think that's kind of the closest example in terms of how people will use these. The riders should use bike lanes whenever possible, but if not, you have the right to use the street just like you would on a bicycle. Only one person at a time, and minors under 18 would have to wear a helmet. In terms of how we actually, when you'll actually start seeing these, before, even with these ordinance changes, what these changes does, they allow the county administrator to enter into operating agreements with the specific company. So even after these traffic changes go into effect, we still need to enter into agreements with the companies themselves. And what we're proposing right now is a 1-year interim agreement to kind of give us time to see how these work, what changes need to be made, because I'm sure there's a lot of things that we're just not even thinking right now, changes to the policies that we'll have to make. And then a year from now, we can kind of address that and maybe enter into a longer term agreement.
Okay, I'm sorry, Mr. Flanders, did you have comments to make before we have our questions and comments? Okay.
No, I just did the on-the-ground research. Rode one to find out if I would end up on the ground.
And how did it go?
It was fine. It felt very similar to riding a bike.
And I know when we had our Better Block event, Lime actually brought the scooters for that day, and people actually used them. So now, Commissioner Philbrook, question, comment?
So during this 1 year operating time, are we gonna be collecting data on all of this? How often they're used, what areas, all of that, so we can be really attuned to, is this worth the, I guess, letting them operate versus is it a problem, you know, on safety?
Absolutely, and we'll actually have access to real-time data, just like you talked about in terms of where these are being used, how often they're being used. So I think that's going to provide us some really interesting information about where, you know, and this, we can use this to kind of track where we might need to add bike lanes to the future, and, you know, where the heaviest traffic is. So we'll absolutely have access to that data.
They have them with training wheels?
Not that I know of, no.
Well, I'm just asking personally, because I guarantee you, I'm not getting on one of those because I don't want to have to call the EMS people in.
Right, yeah.
But I would appreciate the fact, I do appreciate the fact that you're planning on really being cautious and paying attention to the safety, because, yeah. And so what happens to people that decide to use these on the sidewalk?
Well, it would be a traffic infraction, so people should be aware of
What kind
that.
of fines are we talking? I just want to make it out here so the public understands that if they do silly pet tricks, they get in trouble.
Right. Well, I'm not sure the exact fine amount. I guess I'd have to look that up.
It would be a good idea to put that information out.
Yeah.
So they understand that these are not for the sidewalks.
Right, right. We want to make sure that pedestrians have a clear path and that there's not any pedestrian scooter interactions on the sidewalks.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Other questions or comments on the scooter program? I know the companies are ready to be here. But I also do see these used pretty prevalently, particularly over in Kansas City, Missouri, and I have the same kind of safety concerns that Commissioner Philbrook was speaking to, and there's been times that I've been driving over there and someone was on a scooter on a sidewalk and they were just kind of zipping across intersections, and I thought, when we do bring these, we certainly have to do everything we can to encourage people to use them properly and follow traffic laws as they use them.
Right, and part of the operating agreement will require the companies to hold educational campaigns and also to give out free bike helmets. And so we're gonna, we'll hold the companies accountable to that.
Thank you. We have a motion.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Could we have roll call, please?
Roll call. Donovan?
Aye.
Philbrook?
Aye.
Markley?
Aye.
Kane? Aye. Johnson? Aye. Bynum?
Aye. That motion carries. Thank you, gentlemen. And are we ready to go backward? Okay. So, Mr. Flanders, if you'll hang out, because I know you have another item, and we will step back to item 5, which is Lydiana LeBoy, traffic engineer, and we also have police department and Mr. Fisher with Public Works. And this is, again, the speed limit conversation.
Yes. Good evening. I'm Lydiana Lavoy, the city traffic engineer. And today we are going to present to you recommendations for modifications to our city ordinance related to maximum speed limit. All of you should have received a red line of the modifications, which we're going to be summarizing in this presentation. Our current maximum speed limit resembles, our maximum speed limit ordinance resembles the state of Kansas ordinance for maximum speed limit, which define the maximum speed limit in urban districts at 30 miles per hour. Today, what we bring into the table for recommendation is to add in our ordinance a section to define the maximum speed limit for residential districts. actually at a lower speed than the urban district, at 25 miles per hour. By statute and by state law, as a traffic engineer, I had the authority to conduct a traffic evaluation and provide a recommendation for the governing body to modify the statutes laws for speed limits according to the for traffic evaluations. And we, since I've been the city traffic engineer, we have been conducting traffic studies and responding to requests from residence areas about speed limits in their neighborhoods. This representation that we have in the graphic shows the 85th percentile speed on areas. This in particular shows the data collected during 2017 at 20 locations where we have collected data. The 85 percentile speed represents the speed at what the majority of the people drive, which is considered in engineering standards as a safe in the speed that a driver will drive over the prevailing conditions of the road. As you can see on your left side, the residential areas, you typically will observe when you conducted the studies that the speeds are within 25 miles per hour, plus or minus 2 or 3 miles, but above 20 miles per hour, which in general we have in many of our residential areas, but below the statutes of 30 miles per hour for urban district. On the right side, you see the difference on data collection for other type of other type of roadways, collectors, or arterial streets, where the blue line represents the 85 percentile for those speeds. You can see from those that when we collected, we had great difference between locations where we have posted speed limit of 20 miles per hour, but the actual 85 percentile is a lot larger, and the difference a lot larger when we're talking about collector and arterial streets.
Out of this discussion recently about speed limits, staff's been looking into our total sign inventory, and a couple of things that we saw right off the bat was the number of signs we have in our system, and we'll have a better handle on that over the next few months, and probably have another discussion with the commission about how we might go about controlling that and reducing that if we can. But what you can see is we have a few, like the yellow routes right here, where we have inconsistency between 20 and 30. So this clutter and these inconsistencies are what happens when we don't have good controls, good policy, like the traffic management plan. And so we very much want to use written policy and plans so we can administer that and be consistent and create that safe environment for everybody to travel. So we have 48,000 signs roughly, valued at about 7.2 million. And on a 10-year replacement, that's about 720,000 a year, and our budget right now is less than 50. And this is all within the context of what we've been talking about recently, which is a very tight street preservation budget, which includes signs as well. And you know, we're trying to do as much as we'd be really smart with this constrained budget.
Mr. Fisher?
Yes.
I just want to clarify what I'm hearing you say. You're saying the reason we're talking about signs right now in this presentation is you're saying that our speed limits are inconsistent, so we have to put more signs out because we're dropping it to 20 here and raising it to 25 here and raising it to 30 here and dropping it to 20. Or if it were consistently one speed limit, we wouldn't have to put out as many signs.
That's right.
Okay.
Yes, and I'm glad you bring that up. We will not go out and pull 20-mile-per-hour signs. We will go out methodically and pull 30-mile-per-hour signs where they're appropriate and try to be as consistent in our corridors as we can. And then over time, as we replace signs, we'll make corrections through attrition. We'll get the system in order, but that'll take years.
Okay. More of
Any
your...
questions?
Go ahead, Commissioner Philbrook.
Okay, so you said that you won't be pulling up the 20-mile-an-hour signs. I'm happy to hear that because I've already heard from residents chewing about they don't want 25. It's bad enough now with 20 and people speeding. They don't want to give them any more opportunity to go faster yet. Then the other thing is I want to understand this better on the collector and the arterial roads. Would you explain that to me again? Are you wanting to raise the speed limit on those?
Through studies, she's just simply pointing out as an example, other than residential, we know, generally speaking, our speed limits are set fairly low and probably unnecessarily low.
Now, give me an example of a couple of arterial roads.
Leavenworth Road, between 435 and east to 90th.
Okay.
It's a set at 35.
Those double wide road.
Yeah, yes.
Okay. All right, that's one spot.
There's several examples of that.
So we're talking the east-west parallel in some of that too?
I
know, well, I'm trying to get an idea because I'm trying to understand where she wants to go with this.
Other than residential areas, we will base the information is on data like this one. Normally, these are areas where we have a mix of commercial or residential areas where they are collectors or arterial streets, which our speed limit might be posted below 30 miles per hour or a speed limit that is way below of what the actual people feel comfortable driving through those conditions. I can point.
We're looking at what they're comfortable doing or what we think they should be doing. Two entirely different things.
Yeah, let me just. He's going to help me in the language since this is not my forte.
By comfort, she means what they feel safe driving.
Well, that's not a good sign of anything.
85th.
Because what I might feel safe at driving versus somebody else with two kids in the car, that's a whole different ballgame.
Understood. And this 85th percentile represents the majority of people and what they're currently driving at, and that is the standard for setting speed limits. I know it sounds counterintuitive, but that's how cities do this. And you can see right here evidence of it. You've got a 20 mile per hour zone, and nobody's driving. They're all 25 to 30 generally.
I know, and you're talking a collector or an arterial. I kind of.
And in the collectors, yeah, exactly.
So, all right. Well, as we.
And we brought PD here, by the way, so if he.
Yeah.
Wants to add anything
about this while we're talking about this?
I would just say the PD does support this because the data supports this, and other major cities or in the metropolitan area have gone to it. And, you know, I think when you reduce the speed limit in the parks and in the residential neighborhoods, there's a safety right there. I mean, it adds to the safety of that neighborhood. That's why we support this.
So I do have another question for you, since I am talking to the PD.
Yeah.
What are the chances that people are really going to even pay any attention to these signs anyway?
I think it's pretty high, just because if we do the right signage and they are notified that's the speed limit, I mean, I think they will adhere to it. But I think signage is a critical piece to this. They have to know that's what the speed limit is in the neighborhoods and in the parks.
No, I agree there needs to be consistency, and it needs to be not just 20 miles an hour just because we feel like it. You know, it needs to be appropriate to the street. So I guess we'll just have to see how this goes. And then if it creates issues or problems or we have more trouble, you know, then we'll have to address it.
Commissioner Kane.
We had Mr. Fisher and her come out and talk to our neighborhood association. And depending upon where you're at in our neighborhood, going 20 is too fast. You know, if you come around the corner, because some of them are blind corners. And you know, on our curbs, excuse me, on our curbs, if 51% of the people want a new curb, then we get it. And I think if a neighborhood wants to have a 20 mile an hour speed limit, and if 51% of them sign a petition for that, we should allow that. And number two, on this Overland Park thing, it says all vehicles 25 miles an hour in any residence district except where posted otherwise. in an area where I've got cul-de-sacs, I've got people coming around. On my street alone, they didn't go fast when the strips were out, which I thought was kind of funny, but we had a motorcycle kid driving up and down there way too fast yesterday. But the bottom line is, we feel a need to go 20 miles an hour, not 25, and I want to make sure that the neighborhoods have some sort of way to voice their opinion and say, hey, we understand this is, and we all want to be safe. But if the neighborhood's willing to reduce the speed to 20, I think we should abide by that, because who knows their neighborhood better than they do? So I think if we do something there, I think we need to put a part about that in there saying, if there's any discussion, neighborhood has to show a petition, this is what they want, and then we abide by what they want. I don't want to start any trouble for the police or anything like that. But if you drive our area out there, like Independence Boulevard is huge, right? And it's 20 miles an hour, and ours is 30 miles an hour. And when you get down by the pool, I mean, there's cars everywhere. So I think a home association should be able to help us out, tell us what they want, instead of us telling them what they want.
Commissioner Merkley?
So I have two questions I'd like you to address. One is, how does this impact areas like school zones or community center areas where we have specifically set the speed limit lower because we wanted to create a gap between the normal speed limit and that lower speed limit? And then secondly, and I think you kind of addressed this when you were talking about the arterials, but just to be clear, how we're not just changing all the speed limits, so like 59th Street where it's 45 miles per hour, not impacted by this at all, until we decide something different with these arterials, right?
She means the one south of the river.
Well, yeah, yes. Yeah, but I mean, all those streets where the speed limit is set at something different than the residential street sort of standard, those aren't going to just randomly change,
Right.
Stay the same.
Right. Staff's proposing in neighborhoods that you post at 25, and then on all other parts of the system, use 85th percentile and determine what the best speed is. And to your first question, I'm sorry, what was the first question?
About areas like school zones where we tried to create a gap, now there will be less of a gap, maybe?
Traffic engineers tell me they're normally 20. I don't think we would change that even at a 25. I would like to see all school zones with flashers eventually, where they don't now, and that's something we've discussed.
Are you done?
Do you want to say that?
Okay, Commissioner Philbrook.
Yeah.
I really do believe that one of the reasons that we do have all of the neighborhood groups is because we respect what they see is going on in their community, and each one of those groups is different, okay? And they know they live there. It's their children, their grandchildren that they're concerned about. And if I had little kiddos back in one of these areas, 20 miles an hour would be all the fast I would want anybody driving. Because you may not think 5 miles an hour makes a big difference, but I tell you what, about the first kid that darts out in front of your car, you're going to be having a heart attack. So I really, just because other people have decided, you know, that they want 25 miles an hour across the board, and I can understand why you would want to, but I have to go along with Commissioner Kane on the fact that if a community decides, a small community decides in that area they want 20 miles an hour, I think they have that right. I really do. I have to go along with that. If nobody in that community cares that it's 25, then fine. Then the rest of them can be the other. But at least then there's not when you have those communities like what he's talking about, you don't have a lot of spare people driving around. You have the people that live in that area, or maybe the kids that come over to visit or friends. So you really do. I really have to say, I really need to respect the different neighborhoods on how they feel about what their safety needs to be. having said that, I think that we need to take that into consideration with what you're presenting.
Yeah, I think staff clearly understands those concerns. This is,
But we can address that, though, on an individual basis. Is that what I'm hearing? I know, I'm putting you on the spot.
well, my concern would be the time it would take to administer a program like that. I mean, if we're taking requests like that on a neighborhood by neighborhood basis, now a traffic engineer is tied up with a lot of that. I was going to point out that this is, since Commissioner King brought it up, we have had good discussions with that neighborhood. This is the most recent analysis. It's a 30-mile-per-hour neighborhood, and in all cases, the 85th percentile is below 30. And as you saw in all the studies from 2017 and one of the slides earlier, everybody was hovering around that 25-mile-per-hour mark. I guess what I would ask is, what would we gain from posting that 20? Will we change behaviors?
I don't know. You tell me, because as we talked about earlier, we can have almost any kind of sign up. Some people are gonna do whatever they want anyway.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, if you are diligent and persistent, in a particular neighborhood, then I think those neighbors have a tendency to support each other and what's going on.
Sure.
Because we can't have the police everywhere. I mean, these guys are already trying to take care of a lot of stuff.
Right.
And we can't have them sitting on every street just waiting for somebody to do that. And we do ask them on occasion when we have complaints about a lot of speeding going on. And I have certain areas, and all of us have certain areas where we have those problems. So, short of having some kind of a automatic response on a car that says, I'm speeding, and turns them in, I don't know what else, to do as far as that. I don't know how to stop people from going too fast.
Yeah, well, we're looking at a lot of different things. In the traffic management plan, you might recall there were a number of different traffic calming measures in there that we'd like to do. In this case, two things that we have agreed to do is put new crosswalks in here, these 3D crosswalks that will be done in the near future, and then 2 stop signs that we're going to add to the neighborhood.
Which type of crosswalks are you going to use?
3D.
The 3D?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Kane?
Well, you can look at one point on the top right-hand side, they're only going 34 miles an hour. What you can't see is when you're coming through there, as you come around the corners, the trucks, the vehicles, the traffic. But I want to remind everybody, we are the Public Works and Safety Standing Committee. We are not staff. We are elected to do what the community has asked us to do, and this is not unsafe. The community is saying this is what they want in this particular area, which is my area, where I live. I'm not trying to give staff a hard time, but you're talking this area right there, and if there's another area, then let's look at it. But if they get a petition together that says this is what we want to do, we should do it, and we shouldn't have to fight staff over it either. We've had multiple meetings with these, and it's, nope, here's the data. Well, the data doesn't get it when you're coming around the corner at night, and there's a vehicle there in the middle of the road, or barely off to the side, and they're like on my street. At 26 miles an hour, if you're coming down around the corner, and every now and then there's a fifth wheel parked at the end, and there's an immediate right-hand turn up there on the middle left to where there's new addition supposed to go, they are asking to impose this on themselves. We should not get in the way of what they're asking. And I don't know why staff should say, okay, you tell us what you want. Well, I'm telling you that's what I want. And if we're going to approve this, then I want to add an amendment to it where if the home association comes up with 51%, that we follow along with those guidelines. And hell, if we have to pay for the signs, I'll buy them. But I don't think we need staff telling us how to run our districts.
So a couple of comments and questions, I guess. First of all, Commissioner Johnson or Mr. Groneman or Commissioner McKiernan, any comments or questions? Mr. Johnson.
Just, I want to get an understanding of what this term urban district is versus residence district?
Urban district is a term used in the Kansas state law to refer to urban areas. In essence, Kansas City, Kansas is an urban district because we, compared to the rest of the state, we are an urban district within the state of Kansas.
So regardless of where regardless of any place in the city, from First Street all the way out to 150th Street, that's considered an urban district. I see somebody shaking their head. Is that correct?
Yes, it is considered an urban district. Unless otherwise posted, there is no posted the prevailing statute for speed limit is 30 miles per hour.
So what is the difference then between urban and residential then?
I'm sorry?
What is the difference between urban and if in fact
residents
district throughout the entire community, where then are our residential districts then?
The residential that would be in essence the residential areas, local streets, smaller streets from collectors. Collector streets are the street that gather all the small local street and gather all that traffic. So those are collector street and over collector arterials and thoroughfares are others streets. But when we're talking about residence districts, we're referring to local streets.
Well, I can already tell you, I've got a few names are just popping in my head right now that would be livid if I were to vote to increase any ordinance on speed limit by even by 5 miles. I'm pretty sure I'm going to get some phone calls on that. And we already have calls that have come into my office, that have come into other fellow commissioners here, where we're trying to find out, and we're continuing to research the complaints of people speeding. I think if you increase a speed limit, it only causes people to want to drive faster. Maybe the research suggests otherwise, but that's just my perspective of it, and I guarantee you I've got a lot of constituents that feel the same way. I mean, right now they're wanting speed bumps and as a means to slow it down. And again, I'm not sure, I'm not the professional here. I just know what I'm hearing, and that's one of the ones that I hear quite a bit, and I want to make sure that is for the record.
Thank you. Commissioner Markley.
I make
Yes,
something
Mr.
real
Fisher.
clear. There's no action here to increase speed limit. This is actually a reduction in speed limit. This is
Okay,
from
so
30 to 25.
But I think part of the concern that's being expressed by more than one commissioner here is that we have places now that are residential where we have our taxpayers telling us they want 20. So it's an increase over the goal that that neighborhood has set for itself. Commissioner Markley.
So I find this whole discussion very interesting because most of my neighborhoods are 30 miles per hour and they will be happy as pie to get it to 25. So they're like, woohoo, okay, let's move forward. But what I hear is that there are obviously some areas that want it even lower. What I also know is that right now, if I have one guy call me and he wants his street studied for people not stopped at the stop sign or too high speeds or whatever, Lydiana is adding that to her list and she is doing traffic studies for all of this list of one guys that call. So is there some sort of system that we can create where we're only doing traffic studies if we get this many people from the neighborhood that make that request, where we can start to create some work balance for you guys where you're not doing all these traffic studies for the one guy, and we can figure out if the neighborhood is really serious about wanting a lower speed limit, but also sort of relieve that workload for you?
Yes, we do have a traffic calming criteria or manual what we follow. So when somebody call our office, relating speed concerns, we refer to that manual, send it to them, and it's a requirement that is the area is not otherwise identified that there's a concern of safety, then they are required to collect signature from the residents, and at least the area will have to have at least 50% of the residents agreeing to the evaluation.
So,
50.
because I feel like, I guess my question to my fellow commissioners is, I feel like there's a huge swath of our community that's going to be happy about this ordinance, and they're going to be sad if we don't move it forward because they're at 30 miles per hour, or some even 35, and they want to be at 25. But we have some that want to be at 20, and I need to hear from staff. Are we going to address those ones that want to be at, I mean, you've been meeting with them, it sounds like. Are we going to address those ones separately so that we can move forward and make the bulk of our community happy? I mean, I'm sure they're not going to be sad to be going at least down 5, but it sounds like we have some competing interests here, and I'd hate to see us delay making the bulk of the community happy and have these still hanging out there.
We can't.
This is my exact question, I guess. Thank you for articulating that, because what I was...
It was a really rough articulation.
It was great. It was great. Because I think that we can't, as has been expressed here, we can't ignore the requests of the neighborhoods that we've already heard from, that we know are asking for something less. Go right ahead. I think what we want to know is, can we do both at the same time?
We can.
Okay. So I have to express that the person or group that calls and says, people are not stopping at my 4-way stop, people are speeding down my street, I need help, I need speed bumps, I need speed limit reductions. And our response to that is, we're gonna mail you a packet of instructions on how to petition for what you're asking for.
Yes, our procedures are now when we receive a call, I just explained to them the procedure. We mail the information to them, and I always ask is they are calling on behalf of the residents as a whole or just as one person. I explained to them that they had to, he or her will be willing to be the leader in behalf of their residents or the neighbors to become the spokesman for that person and collect the necessary signatures for proceeding with a speed study.
So part of my struggle is that I don't know how many of those you currently have waiting. We know of one who submitted their request more than
me to?
Yes. How many currently of those requests do you have in your stack?
We probably had over 15 standing waiting for on recent studies for data collection, just for speed limit. But requests, we had over 50,000 in our database of people that call throughout the year for traffic issues and concerns.
Thank you. I realize you probably get a lot of phone calls. Commissioner McKiernan.
Thank you, Commissioner Bynum. You made me sit at this table, so of course now I want to ask a question. First of all, this is a joke, but it's not a joke. A PCI of 10 would solve this. What? So we make our roads really nice and wide and flat and smooth, and then we want to put potholes and bumps in to slow people down. So a pavement condition index or a PCI of 10 would solve this in a heartbeat. Okay. My question, though, is for Commissioner Kane and actually for Lieutenant Colonel York. Does the possibility that a neighbor or a neighborhood could set up a speed limit, how does that affect enforceability? Does it create an enforceability issue where it could vary from neighborhood to neighborhood or even block to block within a neighborhood? I don't know.
Commissioner, I'm not sure on that,
okay.
Honestly. If you put in speed bumps.
I'm talking about just the change of speed limit. I'm not talking about speed bumps or any other type of traffic calming, just the change of speed limit.
If we did that, yes, I would think we would, you know, depending on the complaints that we would receive, would enforce, you know, the new speed limit. But I think an educational piece is part of this as well, to tell the community that we've changed the speed limit.
So this goes back to a conversation we had earlier today about public education on a number of issues where we want to get the public better educated about policy. And so, anyway, I bring that up just because I'm curious about how that would affect it. Don't know.
Commissioner Kane.
Actually, the trouble that we have are the people that don't live in the neighborhood. But they have sat down, they've come out to our community, and they've talked to them. And I don't want to be a smart aleck, but we don't have a lot of patrolling going on out there. You know, I mean, it's just like the fire station. We ain't got one of them either. But we have very little police coverage out there, except for those of us that live out there, right? And I laugh about it, I joke about it, but that's the truth. You know, and this isn't just for my neighborhood, it's for neighborhoods like what Commissioner Johnson's saying that the old folks live on. They like going this fast, they don't want to see anybody going down that. And I know that staff wants to do what they think is the right thing, but our people are one paying the taxes. We live in the neighborhood, we know our neighborhood better than anybody else, and there are areas that are dangerous at 25. You got to slow down even at 20 if you're coming by the two red trucks that sit there all the time. And like I said, I'm not trying to stick anybody in the eye. This is what the community wants. This won't be the only community that wants it. And even though it looks like we're hemmed in, we're not hemmed in. They use us to go around to get the other side of the school. So, and we have speed bumps out there. And I like them, but they'd go nuts if we said they're going to install some speed bumps. So I think speed limit signs and awareness, because they'll come back out to our home association meeting again and talk to the folks. You know, we had somebody from the mayor's office there, Lynn Melton, everybody taking notes. But the people that were complaining were the police officers, the fire department, and the other people that work for the city. So we have coverage because people live there, but we don't have coverage. And I think that we should let them tell us what they want, not what we want tell them.
Commissioner Markley.
I just want to clarify something with Commissioner Kane and you know, the other commissioners who have voiced concerns about specific neighborhoods as well. None of you are against the idea of lowering the general speed limit to 25 as long as there's room for exceptions for people who want it lower. Is that a correct interpretation?
I agree 100%. You know, the slower you go, the less somebody's going to get hurt. But some groups want to take it further, and we shouldn't block that.
Okay.
I just always like to find the happy place
sure that
we are all in agreement on one point.
We do actually agree on that.
But that there should be, somebody better write this down, there should be some sort of avenue.
Correct.
That the home association should be able to go to the traffic folks or their commissioner and say 51% of us want it changed to this, just like we do curbs and sidewalks and stuff like that. I believe we have a hell of a lot more than 51%. But and we don't want to fight with nobody. We just want to do what the community feels is right.
Okay, thank you very much. And I appreciate that. Commissioner Johnson?
I just want to stand corrected with staff. Thank you for clarifying that for me. But I also just want you to feel the sensitivities I think we're expressing here as well, because we hear it. That's one of the issues that I hear about a lot. The other thing that I think you and I talked about, Lidiana, is, or maybe it was Ms. Siebens, I talked with somebody about the coast speed of the car, the rate that the cars coast at.
Yep.
Did we have that conversation?
The
idle speed.
Yeah, even if I'm not pushing the gas, my car is still going this fast.
Can you all provide any insight on that?
Well, I can say that by experience and by watching my fellow coworkers when I drive with them, and they drive with me too, you know, the minute that you touch that accelerator, you are going over 20 miles per hour. That's it. Is you are driving in a residential street or any other street, and you are hitting your accelerator, you are going to be over 20 miles per hour.
Okay, thank you.
This is an observation that you can do by yourself when you drive around. Naturally when you do a curve, when you turn around, you're about, turn right or left, you're about 50 miles per hour, 70 miles per hour. Obviously, when you are in a straight line, you are higher than that. I just also want to say that we are not simply bringing this to your attention because we want to implement 25 miles per hour to be consistent. One thing, it is consistent throughout the metro area, but other is because we have been doing this for many years. I've been here almost 7 years, or not 70, almost 7 years, and since the beginning, the number of calls for understanding of the speed limits and how people do and what is the concept about speeding in my neighborhood is a real concern. It's a real calls that we get every single day. I have worked with many residents in the area where we had collected data before doing anything when they call. We have removed every sign on the neighborhood and then spend some time and then collect data again and then post at 25 miles per hour and collect data again. The difference is not significant. The people drive at the conditions that they feel safe driving, and this is our result. So the data and the request that we're doing today is based on information that we had experienced, and then we feel comfortable that it's safe in this environment. An example that I can also bring as a Colester Street, where we made the modifications, is Central Avenue. Central Avenue was posted as speed. A segment on that was 20 miles per hour, and the rest was 30 miles per hour. And other areas were like 45, near I-70. We did modifications along Central Avenue to reduce the speed, and we know that considerably the speed had reduced. And the number of calls for people getting tickets at 20 miles per hour had significantly reduced since we did the project and posted speed limit uniform throughout the corridor. We had done in residential streets as well, where we had gone from 20 to 30, or for those locations where a collector street need to be 30, and people were thinking that people need to be so slow. And we had done it also in residence street, where there was an inconsistency in speed, and we had posted 25 miles per hour, and since then we had not have others. So we work one-on-one, and we have worked with the neighborhood that Commissioner Kane is doing. We want to work with every neighborhood to address their concerns, and to the best of our understanding, and we know when we can change behaviors or not.
I think we might have heard from all of us, but we know one and possibly two audience members. If you would give us your name, and you have 2 minutes. That's at full commission.
My name's Dana Bai. I live at 10708 Augusta.
Dana, is your green button on your microphone?
Yeah, it is now.
Okay.
Dana Bai, 10708 Augusta Drive in Northridge at Piper Estates. I would like to thank Mr. Fisher and Lydiana, Commissioner Kane, and Commissioner Bynum, because we have been in consistent communication since we made a request to that department for speed signage over a year ago. Our neighborhood's 15 years old. We had no speed signs whatsoever. So we reached out to them. We requested 20. We requested deaf child signage. We requested school zone signage. And possibly the addition of some three-way stops to try to slow people down. They collected data, then one day I came home and they had put out 30 mile per hour speed limit signs, and they installed the school zone signage. The neighbors immediately were upset and wondered what the heck happened. Now, I understand that the default speed limit was 30 because it was not posted. That's not something that a general person may understand. And that's why we specifically were requesting 20. We have a school zone. We have a sidewalk that leads directly to the Piper School District campus. We have over 169 homes, easily over 500 residents. We have hundreds of children. And we are very concerned that 30 miles per hour was incredibly too high for our district. They have agreed to go to 25. Our concern with that is that we still have a school zone. So now we're going to have a school zone that is 25 instead of 20. We would feel comfortable with 20 because, again, we have the school zone. We were denied the deaf child signage, and they did provide us with some data explaining that decision. That has not brought any type of comfort to the family, and the HOA has basically said that we would step in and we would buy the deaf child signage ourselves. We were trying to draw attention to the fact that we have a deaf child in our neighborhood and that we didn't agree with the posted speed limit. They are working with us. I do feel like we have made some headway, but when you look at their own data and it shows that at 20 miles per hour, people were going a handful of miles over that limit, if you start off at 25, that is also going to be the case. So why wouldn't we want to start at 20? If you start at 25, then you're going to be allowing them to go up to 30. So let's start at 20.
Thank you very much. Are there others in the audience who would like to address this item? What I'm asking, and I believe I'm hearing my fellow commissioners ask, is with regard to what Ms. Bai brings that Commissioner Kane is bringing and Commissioner Johnson's bringing from a different neighborhood. If we have a comfort level in knowing that in those cases where we know we have an active neighborhood seeking a lower speed limit, that we can have a mechanism to continue to work with those, then I think we might be able to have a motion on this item. Commissioner Kane.
Well, we're always looking for volunteers, so I volunteer Northridge to be the pilot program for that. You know, and then see how it works, go through the growing pains that we're gonna have on both sides of the fence. But since they've been complaining about the longest, they ought to be the first ones that we serve. That would go along with your motion.
Okay, others, anyone? I think I will then make that motion.
With the Northridge being the pilot.
So the motion is for purposes of adequately recording to agree with your proposal to lower the speed limits from 30 to 25 in the residential areas with the stipulation that we continue to find ways to work with and resolve issues in individual neighborhoods that want a lower residential speed limit, and Northridge at Piper Estates will be our pilot neighborhood for that. And I have a second. And then 20 in the parks. All right, is that satisfactory? Could I have, yes, legal?
Commissioners, I see what we're trying to do tonight, but this is a proposed ordinance.
Ordinance change.
And I would suggest perhaps we send this back and come forward with a new proposal that might look neater in the code book.
I think that's fine. Commissioner Markley?
I was just going to suggest we just separate the motions and have a motion to approve the ordinance and a separate motion to set up a pilot program for other.
Yes, but we want our ordinance. We really feel pretty strongly about this neighborhood level. Okay, so I'm going to agree to rescind my motion and make a new motion to send this back. Thank you. And then what we're asking for is a way to have legal language in our ordinance that does allow for the carving out of the individual neighborhoods with a process and a pilot program.
I think that would be best, Commissioner, also just keeping in mind the language in state statute that imposes some requirements of traffic studies before speed limits decisions are made by the authorities.
Okay, and I think let's make sure we all understand that when that comes back Commissioner Philbrook?
Now, are we going to have them go ahead, come back to us first before they come before general?
It'll have to come back here.
Okay, just want to make sure what I'm hearing.
Any questions at all, just feel free to contact any of us, but I think we've made a lot of points. I have a motion and a second. Could I have roll call, please?
No. Do we need to do that?
Don't I need roll call on a motion to send it back? Yes.
Yes.
My clerk says yes.
So are you moving to send it back?
Yes. May I have roll call on the motion to send it back?
Roll call. Groneman. Aye. Philbrook.
Aye.
Barclay.
Aye.
Kane. Aye. Johnson.
Aye.
Bynum.
Aye. Thank you very much. The ayes have it. Thanks a lot. Thank you. We'll see you soon. All right, we handled item 6.
We're officially halfway through.
Item 7. Item 7, we have Mr. Flanders here with planning. And we have an urban trails bike lanes presentation. This would be a resolution authorizing a survey of land for this project. Mr. Flanders, are you going to kick us off?
Yes, thank you, Commissioner. So we hosted a Better Block event down here on 6th Street by City Hall about a month ago. And this was a demonstration project for safer street design. I think it's fitting that this follows the other presentation because that street is signed as 20 miles per hour and nobody drives 20 miles per hour because the street is very wide and people feel safe driving at a much higher speed. And so what we wanted to do with this demonstration is to actually narrow the street, narrow the travel lanes to 11 miles per hour, or 11 feet, because we know that lane width is highly correlated with speed. So by narrowing the lane width, we could reduce the speed. And by doing that, we gain quite a bit of space on the road. And we realized that with the amount of space that we had, we could actually implement what has been on our plans for a long time of doing a downtown trail network and using a different approach that will accelerate greatly the ability to build out that network by using our existing assets and our existing right-of-way and build on-street trails that are separated from traffic within our existing right-of-way. So this is a picture of what we demonstrated that day. And if you're not familiar, Better Block is an event where people go out and with all volunteer labor from KU students to just neighborhood people who wanted to participate and using completely temporary materials such as duct tape and potted plants and cones, we implemented this design. And it was a huge success. This series of pictures really says it all for me, to see the children feeling safe out on their bikes, people crossing the street, mothers with strollers. It worked well for traffic as well. We even had several large fire trucks and school buses go through, and the narrow lanes didn't hinder the ability of these vehicles to get through. It did slow down traffic quite a bit though, although we did not see any backups because it has a relatively low traffic volume. But with the lower speeds and the amount of features for people on the street, it really activated the street. So we had a temporary market, we had the farmers market, we had the library come out with their mobile library, and you really saw a lot more people on the street than you typically would. And I just like this picture, so I put it in there, the mayor out on his bike with the bike police. This is another view of it. This is the before. So you have those 16.5-foot drive lanes with parking on either side. And this is what we demonstrated. We shrunk those to 11 feet. We put in a 12-foot trail on the side with a 2-foot buffer, and we still have 5 feet left over. If we were going to do this permanently, I would recommend that we shrink that trail a little bit down to 10 feet with a 2-foot buffer. It felt very generous to ride on that. And that gives us enough space to add another parking lane, which will also reduce speeds and will further protect people who are riding their bikes or scooters in that trail. And we can do this all the way down 6th Street to Central without removing that on-street parking. So as I mentioned, this is something that we've had on our plans for a long time. This is a 2007 downtown master plan, and it includes a concept for bringing the Heritage Trail through downtown. This is kind of hard to see, but the brown line is the Heritage Trail. They're showing it coming from the Intercity Viaduct up north on 5th Street and south on 6th Street. We've implemented some of this, but as I've said, it's been slow. But this is an approach that can dramatically accelerate us building out this network. And so I've been using this word trail, and what do I mean by trail? Well, traditionally, when you think of a trail, you think of either an off-street trail, multi-use trail where pedestrians and cyclists are there together. You might also think of a multi-use side path trail where it's right beside the road. And again, you're sharing ped and bike. But we're also thinking about this in a new way that we can see these protected on-street trails as well. So it would be protected with some pylons and completely separated from traffic. What we're not talking about are share rows or traditional on-street bike lanes, which are not separated from traffic, and most people don't really feel comfortable riding in those types of facilities. This is a map of a complete network. So we were talking about 6th Street and we're talking about 5th Street, but I just wanted to quickly note that this is a network that could easily be built out to serve all of downtown KCK, really all of the urban area east of 635. And in fact, west of 635 as well, but I'm just showcasing this downtown area here. And this is also part of a wider regional effort of a Missouri River bike loop, because this goes north to Riverside, where we've built this new bridge on the 7th Street Trafficway, through Riverside to North Kansas City, and they're about to undertake a major improvement on Burlington, putting in a completely separated cycle track across the bridge into downtown KCMO, where the Riverfront Heritage Trail, for the most part, already exists. I wanted to point out that wayfinding is critical. Right now, we don't have very good signage, even on the portions of the trail that we have built out, and that could be improved. We are also have funding for 5 bike share stations in 2019, and as you just saw earlier tonight, the scooter ordinance. And as these things begin to launch, we want to make sure that we have safe infrastructure for these types of uses. And I wanted to point out some of the other benefits. Number one is safety. These type of improvements will slow down traffic. It'll get that 85th percentile down to where we want it if we design our streets to be slower. There are health benefits, of course, of having the extra space to have the trails on the street. There are equity benefits. We have many areas where up to a third of households do not have a car. So thinking about those people walking and getting the transit, being able to get to jobs safely is an important part of this. Neighborhoods, this increases the quality of life in neighborhoods, and I think something that's very important is the economic development factor of these trails, and that's something I want to talk just a little bit further about. I've gone to many cities to look at their infrastructure, and I was most impressed with Indianapolis, and it seemed like a city that is most similar to us, both in culture and existing built environment. They built out a trail, 8-mile trail, in their downtown, and from 2008 to 2014, so before they built the trail and after they built the trail, they saw the properties within 500 feet of that trail increase by 148%, or a total of $1 billion increase in property value. And so that's a way that we can build our tax base and grow community wealth. They also had their number one employer, Cummins, which is an international company that builds engines, locate in their downtown. They demanded that they be located on the cultural trail. And then immediately they saw a grocery store, a brand new grocery store in their downtown, which had before been a food desert, develop across the street from the major employer. So a lot of parallels to what we'd like to achieve in downtown KCK. I want to just run through a quick example to give you a more concrete idea of what this could look like. So right now, we have the Riverfront Heritage Trail that just kind of drops you off at 4th and Armstrong. To orient yourself, I turn this so north is on this side. This is the river up here, and this is the trail that comes underneath I-70 Intercity Viaduct, and it comes into 4th Street. Well, this is actually designed, and on most maps you look at, designated the Riverfront Heritage Trail on this sidewalk, and it was built as a 10-foot wide multi-use side path, thinking back to that earlier slide. What it really needs is just some signage and a stripe down the middle to direct people about where to go. It continues south to 5th Street and then crosses 5th Street, and it continues on Armstrong as a 10-foot wide trail. It also goes to the north on 5th Street. In fact, it goes to the north almost all the way to Fairfax. There's a little gap in Fairfax before you get to Fairfax, but there is a 1-block gap right here between Minnesota and Armstrong, and that's the only gap where it's narrower than 10 feet. So I'm going to take you to the north, and you can see it goes all the way to the north, completely separated from traffic, but again, not marked in any way, not signed, there's no stripe. I'd recommend highlighting conflicts at intersections and driveways in green. And it goes all the way to the north, and I'm just showing it all the way to Jersey Creek Trail, which then hooks into another portion of this overall trail network. But in fact, it goes all the way north almost to Fairfax. So if we jump back and go south on 6th Street, there's actually room on 6th Street to build this trail all the way south on 6th Street. And again, what this is not showing is we're actually keeping this on-street parking. It's just bumped over. We're just shrinking everything down. And that can continue all the way south on 6th Street, really all the way to Central. And so that's, again, the network. What we've been doing is going from those idea sketches that I just showed you to more of engineered drawings. We've done that around where the proposed grocery store is. And we'd like to continue to do that. And we believe that we can implement this 5th and 6th Street improvements in the spring of 2019 using primarily just paint and removing a few islands in the middle of the street. That's it for this presentation, and I open up to any questions.
And Zach, I know that your what you need is approval for surveying, correct?
Yeah, and really the approval that we're looking for is to continue to work on this.
Okay.
And yeah, exactly.
Okay. Questions, comments? Commissioner Philbrook.
So, yay, because I just got to go to Kansas Association of Counties, and this is one plan that fits right in with everything a lot of the other progressive communities are doing. And what's really interesting is that Public Works has instituted a lot of and are working on a lot of things that are happening around the United States that are more progressive. And it sounds like we're ahead of the game compared to a lot of other communities. So I want to thank you for that. Thank you for bringing this forward. Is that a motion? Yeah, I move that. I move that we move you on forward.
We have a motion. We need a second. We have a motion and a second. May we have roll call, please?
Roll call. Groneman.
Aye.
Philbrook.
Aye.
Markley.
Aye.
Kane. Aye. Johnson.
Aye.
Bynum.
Aye. And that carries. Thank you so much. And I want to thank everybody for your patience and your durability as we slog on through. Item 8 is a resolution authorizing a survey of land necessary for safe routes to school Phase F's. Mr. Bain.
Good evening, Commissioners. This resolution is similar to what we just had, authorizing the surveys to take place for any potential land acquisition and declaring that this project is necessary. I believe you've heard a presentation about safe routes to schools previously.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Roll call. Groneman. Aye. Philbrook.
Aye.
Markley,
Aye.
Kane, Johnson,
Aye.
Bynum.
Aye, and that carries. Thank you. Mr. Droppelman, we anticipate with excitement your fireworks presentation. 2018 fireworks report. John Droppelman, our fire marshal. Sir, welcome.
Thank you. Good to be here tonight. I'll make this as quick as we can. This is basically our financial and statistical analysis of our last fireworks season. Go ahead and, I have control. Good. We had 44 fireworks stands this year. That's the amount of fees that were collected, a little over $49,000 from business licensing. A slight bit of that funds came from 2 stands that didn't clean up their mess in time, and they were partially fined for that. Compared to years past, this is what the city takes, or UG takes in revenues from the sales tax of all this stuff. 2017 is the most recent. We'll get 2018 just before fireworks season next year, but it's fairly consistent with what comes in from sales tax. Law enforcement part. We looked at, the law enforcement looked at these categories of complaints to figure out what we had to respond to during the June 29th through July 5th. It's typically the time we have the most problems. The Sheriff's Department had 15. Majority of those came on July 5th after midnight. The Police Department had 374 calls for service, and the peak of those was on July 4th. Public Works, it cost them $2,106 for their work dealing with all the barricades or street closures. All of the street closures, all the block parties cleaned up properly, so all their funds here that they charged for that were refunded. The Parks Department reported lighter problems in the parks than normal. Here's what the fireworks season cost them, about $1,420. They had damage to a couple of items that they had to replace and some extra trash pickups and signs. Air quality pretty much reported about the same thing as in years past. I did not do a study on what the weather was like that night, but we were within the EPA's limits on what they monitored. The fire department, we had 9 calls relating to fireworks complaints, only 1 injury this year. It was a fairly minor hand injury. In relation to EMS stuff, Kansas University Hospital, from June 30th to July 4th, they saw 29 patients in the ER and 9 were admitted. None of them were life-threatening, so it was a little better than years past. I don't know if that's because it was on a Wednesday this year or what, but it was a little bit lighter than normal throughout the entire state. We also had 3 tree fires, porta potty fire. The total damages this year from fires was about $46,000. Last year was, I think it was only like about 5 or 6, but that's because there were no house fires last year. The house fires usually bring this factor up pretty quickly. We had 3 the year before, so we were in several $100,000 worth of damage 2 years ago. There's your property damage for this year. Yes.
I think we might have a question on one of your slides.
Okay.
A point of clarification, because I actually had this question last year, I think, from a constituent. We list the property damage, but that does not mean the unified government is
No,
to fix
and
it.
I take that out later on here.
Yeah, and
just the cost that incurred by
It's not
us.
to say that that is insignificant damage and that it's not terrible damage to the homeowner. Just I had a constituent concerned that we were fixing the damages. So just to be clear, you were listing the damages, but we're not paying $45,000.
No, we're not. So there's your total. It doesn't include wear and tear on fire department vehicles or police vehicles, stuff like that. That is stuff we incur, but it's kind of hard to estimate. So here's the amount the fire department actually incurred. So total between miles driven, some overtime costs for the inspectors, and I calculated the federal rate for the tax rate on our vehicles that we had to drive. I missed it. It's about $6,400 I think the fire department had to take on in their budget for it. So this year we had 5 major violations that we had to deal with. Almost all of them occurred on the 4th of July during the closing of the stands. The police department was involved in one of them. It was fairly serious, and not going to approve of permits for some of these stand owners that did this. One of them, we had a trash fire, intoxicated stand owners that lit off all their trash and debris out in the middle of Minnesota and then threw fireworks on top of it, and we almost had some firemen and police officers injured by that. So they'll be not allowed to have stands next year. They also did several stands shot off fireworks right next to their stands, cleaning out their inventory, and that's pretty dangerous on that end. I did have one stand owner that submitted a false report with their leftover inventory that we managed to track down. Here's the Minnesota, one of the incidents on there. They just threw out their pallets and junk and set it on fire. The owner the stand owner that was operating out of this business down here on State Line, they chose to operate their supply out of an old building downtown that's not permitted. It's not safe to hold fireworks. I ended up getting some reports on it, found several 18-wheeler tractor trailer loads full of it after the 4th of July. I actually found them in September. So that was confiscated. They'll be going to court next week, and they will not be operating a fireworks stand for the next 2 years. So there's your cost the fire department incurred, direct cost, $6,650. Blow through this. So here's what the city of the UG incurred as a cost. About a little over $10,000 is what all the departments submitted. Add that to the business license revenue and the sales tax revenue, the city took in about $73,000. And that's it. Any questions?
Questions or comments?
All right.
All right. We'll look forward to your report next year. Thank you. Item 10 is an update on our new fire station. Gentlemen, John Kelly's here. We have Assistant Chief, oh my gosh, all of a sudden, Andrade. Sorry.
It's been a long night.
All right, who's going to kick us off?
We're going to start with Kyle's going to give us an update tonight. We don't have a PowerPoint presentation. This is kind of a progress day update.
I love you for that.
Darn it.
So it's just kind of an update where we are, so I'll go ahead and turn over to Kyle.
Thank you.
All right, good evening.
Good evening.
I'm Kyle Morrison. I'm the architect with Arc Images. We're talking about the planned new fire station at 2913 Hutton Road. Currently, we're working with the construction manager on finalizing the building systems and the building design and the pricing. Also working on the preliminary development review process. We met with the DRC on September 25th, and the PDP was submitted on September 28th. We have applied for a variance to the building setback that would reduce it to what is used in non-ag zones. Staff, we've received engineering comments, and we'll be responding to that tomorrow morning. Announcements for the neighborhood meeting were mailed out on October 12th. The meeting is scheduled for a week from tonight, October 29th at 6 p.m. at the Patricia Diane Kane Community Center on 122nd Street. On November 13th, we'll be going to the Board of Zoning Appeals regarding the setback, and immediately following that to the Planning Commission, and then on November 29th to the Board of Commissioners for the preliminary development plan. So design continues. We're making progress. We're working on the building systems and finalizing the design. We do intend to submit for a grading permit soon. We've talked about the possibility of a groundbreaking ceremony in early December with actual grading on site starting sometime in the time frame of mid-December to first of the year. And as I described before, this will allow the time needed for settlement of the earth material before we actually start construction.
Are there any questions or comments for the gentleman? If not, we appreciate, yes, Commissioner Merkley.
I was just going to ask, has anything changed in terms of the final end timeline since the last time you spoke with us?
No. We're hoping to speed it up, but we're not to the point yet that we can speed it up.
All right. No one else? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Item 11.
We're in the home stretch of meeting one. Is this the last?
No.
12.
There's 12 items. But number 12 is easy. Item 11 is 2019 major capital improvement projects. Just a very short, brief topic. Hello, Mr. Fisher.
Hello again. We will try to be as brief as we can. Brandon is going to highlight this for us, and Troy and I will be ready to answer any questions you have.
Good evening, Commissioners. This is something we've started for the past couple of years, coming before you in October to really remind you of what we're going to be doing majorly next year. That way, as you get questions from your constituents, you can remind them of the processes that we're going on. First ones we want to highlight are the engineering division projects. These are the ones that are put out by the folks on the 7th floor. Of course, we have our annual street preservation program, which is a big push that everybody's really focused on. We'll be coming back to you again next month, as well as highlighting our future projects, but to highlight the street preservation program even more in depth, reveal a little bit more of the data that we've got so far. The Holiday Drive reconstruction, for anybody who's driven out in the area of 65th and Holiday Drive recently, it is now back open. The settlement area over the mines has been fixed. The road's back open. We'll be doing the second phase of it, which is installing monitoring cable, which I'll highlight here in a minute. Safe routes to school, we'll be continuing that with our William Allen White West Middle School and Francis Willard Elementary School projects. Leavenworth Road Phase 2 will begin our kickoff. We've started design now, and I'll highlight a little bit of where we're at with all that. Holiday Drive bridges, we've got 2 bridges we're going to be working on just a little bit further west out towards the Lake Quivira area before you get to 435. Bridge 223, 36 in Ohio replacement. We wanted to bring this up specifically because we mentioned this to you guys during the budget season. Originally, this was put out for 2022, but due to some conditions that happened due to a lot of the rains we've had, and then also talking with the residents in the area, we needed to move this up. We've worked with finance, budget, and the administrator's office to get the approval to reallocate some funding from a different project. It was called the 11th Street Bridge over Jersey Creek. The reason we chose that one was because the bridge at Jersey Creek is still structurally fine. And also with the Northeast Master Plan going on, we decided we didn't want to put in a new box structure there that's not going to go with the flow of the overall master plan for that area for the next 100 years. So we're going to wait until that plan gets ironed out a little more, bring that project back in and put a con-span bridge or some other structural bridge that looks appropriate for what we're trying to do with that area. So you will be seeing some movement on this area coming soon. In our priority traffic signal replacement program, our focus next year is going to be improving our fiber corridor network. So along State, parallel Leavenworth Road, some of the other areas with our major fiber corridors that needs traffic signal improvements. That's what we'll be focused on those. As I mentioned, our street preservation, currently next year we're looking in between our debt and cash funds on about $5 million. That's a little bit better than we've been doing in prior years. So it's going to help us do a little bit more, especially with our new proactive approach of treating our roads with surface treatments similar to what we've done in a couple areas this year, as opposed to just our regular mill and overlay. Leavenworth Road Phase 2, as I said, we're currently in design for this. We've had one public meeting recently in the last couple months. We will have another one soon. The date hasn't been set on that, but we'll let everybody know when that date comes. The reason we want to let everybody know about this is because some utility work will probably begin in summer to fall of next year to get out ahead of the project that we're hoping to bid in 2020. Being this is a partnership with KDOT, KDOT kind of mandates that all the utility work be done before the project is bid. So we're trying to get that out ahead farther, that way we're not delaying anything when it comes time. So if you start seeing work out there, just know it's the utility work that's coming to you. As I mentioned, the Holiday Drive bridges, we've got 2 bridges that are highlighted by green stars. The lower, I should say the southwest one, is just east of 78th Street. And that is this structure up here in the upper left-hand corner. As you can see, there's a lot of debris in the channel. The side is kind of crushed out a little bit. This makes it difficult for the guardrails to stay attached. So it creates kind of a safety issue. And the other bridge in the northeast corner is right at 73rd, and that's this lower left corner picture that you can see how very small that is. Now that's not filled in, that is truly just because of the topography of the area, that's how big that box is. That causes some flooding issues over the winter of overtopping that road, so we're trying to fix that and make it a little more safe, as well as we're running into some of the guardrail issues, as you can see. I mentioned the Holiday Drive replacement, how phase 1 is already completed, and phase 2, the monitoring portion. What we're doing is installing cable in the ground that will alert us to any future settlement. That way we can go and put out, that'll automatically alert flashing signs to let anybody traveling that road, and that'll also alert staff so we can go out and close gates and assess the road if the condition needs it. Water pollution control has several projects they're going to be working on. Our annual storm sanitary and pump station repairs and treatment plant repairs, it's a $10 million chunk that goes towards fixing our network. It's a huge, huge project, or huge projects, multiple, but it's vital to the operation of our system. Sewer maintenance facility relocation, currently we've looked at several different sites, and we've kind of got one now that we're reevaluating to make sure that's where we want to put a new maintenance facility that's more centrally located within the county or in the city. That way we can dispatch personnel appropriately whenever we get issues come up. Call Point Biosolids I'll touch on here in a minute with a different slide. The Piper Creek Interceptor is a project to expand the sewer network system in Western Piper that will accommodate current needs as well as some future expansion out west. You're talking north of Leavenworth Road, about 126 to K7 area, that whole kind of area in there. Walcott Treatment Plant I'll touch on here in a minute. The 77th Street Troop Avenue 96-inch line replacement, just south of the intersection of 78th and Parallel. There's a very large storm line that runs underneath the road. A couple years ago we had a couple small failures in it that we did some repairs to, but the line itself is a big old corrugated metal pipe that needs to be replaced. So we're going to replace that finally. That way we've got a good structure in the ground for the next 100 years, hopefully. And the Kaw River Bank stabilization, I'll talk about in a minute as well. So the Walcott Treatment Plant is something that's been big that everybody's talked about for a few years. Excuse me. The construction manager at risk selection process is currently underway. We've shortlisted several contractors that have been proposals to us, and we should have those selections finalized by December. Currently, our estimates for phase 1 completion, which is the green color areas you see on the map, by 2021. That way we'll have everything up and running and we'll be using the current treatment plant. It's this little sliver right up here. We'll be using that in the meantime. It's what's been functioning out there for a very long time and just needs a little help. The Kaw Point Biosolids, I'm actually going to let Jeff kind of touch on this. He knows a little bit more about it than I do.
Okay, you might recall our discussions about this project prior to budget. We continue to work through an interlocal agreement with KCMO, an interim agreement, and then followed by a wholesale agreement, which I think will be in place in the second quarter of next year. In the meantime, we're working on RFP, should be out in the month of November to select our design build partner.
The important thing to take away from this is that $70.5 million price tag you see up there isn't something that's going to hit us all at once. We've got it phased over several years. And also keep in mind that this is a possible revenue source moving forward for us. So we'll help pay off some of that and also bring some money into us to help with other future advancements. Kaw River Levee Raise project. I'll actually let Jeff continue on that one since he's been involved.
And Melissa Seaman might want to jump in too if I missed anything, but we're essentially just waiting on Congress. They've essentially approved a word of bill, but we're waiting on a correction to that to make the two projects one ongoing project so that we are fully funded.
And I can update that as of today. Right now, what we have is the word of bill for 2018 has passed both the House and the Senate. It is waiting on the president. Apparently, there's some things going on out west that are causing him to delay his signature. I'm not sure exactly what that is, but it has nothing to do with any emergency declarations or anything related to that. So we also are waiting on a management report that was passed by the House to actually be passed by the Senate. That's got the fix to merge the two projects. And just a caution that the word fully funded pertains merely to the design and construction, does not pertain to real estate acquisition or utility relocates.
Commissioner Philbrook.
I just want to say something you didn't mention, but I'm sure a lot of us will be delighted about, is that after this goes in, the stinky smell goes away.
For the Call Points Biosolids project?
Yes, sir.
Well, and as we know, Casey Moe is the
I know
key part of that.
But the smell
right.
does not respect the state line.
You are correct.
Thank you.
We'll quickly highlight a couple buildings and logistics division projects that are going to be going on. The first one is the City Hall structural and study and temporary repairs, the building that we're in now. There have been some initial inspections that have been done periodically over the past several years, and our engineers and our staff down in buildings and logistics has been working with a structural engineer and an architect on how to make some repairs in the temporary time before we can do some real major fixes to the building. The Juvenile Justice Center everyone's familiar with, and we'll highlight that in a minute. And the Health Department to our east, there's going to be some major improvements going on over there. The roof, lighting, HVAC, fire alarm system, and other smaller things throughout the building as budget allows. So the Juvenile Justice Center, as everyone's probably seen, we've got a big hole just to our west and north a little bit. We've started and almost completed with the parking lot. Original opening date for the new parking lot was supposed to be in September, but due to all the rains we had, it just kind of forced everything back. We're anticipating to be completed within the next week or so, so by the end of this month with that. And we're still looking on schedule for September or for completion of first quarter 2024, the Juvenile Justice Center. Finally, we want to give a couple updates on some of the projects from 2018 that are still ongoing or that have wrapped up to give everybody some information about. Leavenworth Road Phase 1, anybody who's driven the stretch from 38 to 63rd has seen all the work that's going on out there. Really from 63rd to about 52nd is really close to completion. There's some final punch list things we're working on, but for the most part, that's the look and feel that you're going to get throughout that corridor. And I think we can all agree that it has a really good feel to it. The downtown grocery store infrastructure improvements, as everybody's been involved with that, Public Works has been brought in to look at our roads down here in coordination with some of the stuff that Zach brought forward earlier. And one of the other things that we've looked at is the parking. Given that the new grocery store is potentially going to take up some of the parking in the rear lot, we've had to, look at a couple ideas, and I'll have a slide in a minute about how we're thinking about fixing some of that. The NRSA or Census Tract 422 area, we have our sites selected. We've got quantities on what we're going to be doing, and we should be bidding that within the next month or so. So by spring of next year, when everybody's ready, the ball field that's just north of Park Drive on 27th will have some new sidewalks, some new curb, a new parking lot, and some new storm drainage to keep it from washing out every time water runs down the edge of the road. And this is the first step in many of this whole NSRA area that we're going to be doing. We've got several projects planned out for the next 5 years, and we'll be bringing those to you as we start developing them even more. The Hutton Road improvements, the Phase 2 improvements that have been going on for quite a while, those have bid out. Those have been awarded to a contractor, and we'll begin starting those in the spring. That way we can coordinate the construction of some of the underground implements with the fire station. That way we're not having to rip up anything new.
I've got a question on that one, though. So what we've seen occur up to now, is that utility work?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
And the last thing I want to highlight is it's a piece of our pavement preservation program, the MAQS, or Modified Aggregate Quick Set. This is something that we've done. I'll get to that in a second, sorry. Got ahead of myself. This is what I was referring to earlier about the downtown grocery store infrastructure improvements. As you can see, you might not be able to see that great because of the colors, but some of these areas now have diagonal parking on the roadways where they were just parallel parking before. We're doing that in several areas. We're improving some of the crosswalks, making them more visible to the public. That way everybody knows where they should really be crossing. We're looking at changing some of the traffic patterns just a little bit. And then this area down here between Armstrong and Ann along 6th, where the fire department currently parks a lot of their large implements or has other squad vehicles there. We're looking at doing something new to our city, and that's that back end parking. So it's going to be an interesting little practice.
I'll go a little bit more on this. Just want to point out what we've shown here is strictly striping, and that's what we're planning on to do first. This is between the existing curb lines, so it should be a very minimal cost. And the condition of the roads now and the construction that's going to happen with the grocery store is giving us the opportunity to put the striping down now without redoing the roads, which we typically don't do. But it gives us a good opportunity to try it out and see how it works. And then once the construction is further along and we're not having to worry about construction equipment tearing up roads, we'll come back in, and whether we put mill and overlay or microsurface or some treatments on the road, then restripe it again. But it gives us a good opportunity to try out this striping plan and before we actually put it on new pavement. So that's kind of what we're focusing on here, and this is a in work sketch right here, so we haven't got the final one done. And Commissioner McCarron's here. We'll let you know, and we'll set up a meeting with you before we do it, just so you can have a chance to review it. So just want to make sure you know that.
And what I started jumping ahead to a minute ago was our modified aggregate quickset pavement preservation projects. We did 2 this year on Quindaro Boulevard from 7th to 22nd and along Metropolitan from 635 to 55th. For those 2 areas, based on the amount of pavement that we did, it was really about 5.5 miles. Total cost to redo that if we were doing a mill and overlay, it's going to be about $675,000 to $700,000. We did this including crack sealing, pavement marking, the new surface, and all the required traffic control for $375,000. So it's quite a bit cost savings. It gets us a lot more bang for our buck, extends the life of the pavement itself as opposed to really just kind of redoing the pavement. And as I think most everybody who's had contact with people in those areas, it looks good, it drives well, there's not any kind of real issues with it. I even have a little video here of how it was applied on Metropolitan. We've shown you videos before in other cities, but it's nice to see something in our own area. So what you're seeing here is there's an emulsion mix that's being fed out of the back of this truck into this hopper, and it's got 2 auger screws that are spinning it out in this box. There's a squeegee that follows behind and lays it down. What we're doing here is actually a 1/4 inch aggregate. We can go all the way up to a 1/2 inch aggregate, which we'll be doing on arterial roads. It gives it a little more strength to it for holding up to heavier traffic. I'm walking at a pretty good clip right now, and I'm keeping up with it. You'll see in a minute once I stop. This is actually how fast the process goes. We closed down 1 lane of Metropolitan for about an hour. While they ran the entire length, they switched traffic over and did the other side.
It was literally, I left for work in the morning, I came back for lunch, and it was done. It was really quick.
You know, Brandon, the way that you described that machine working, that was exactly how I thought it would work.
I'm glad to hear that.
No, I've been on both those roads, and they both look great. Yeah. Really do.
In addition to, and what we consider kind of an added bonus, if anybody's driven on them, you know they're a little bit noisier than a freshly rolled asphalt road. It's kind of a natural traffic calming in a way. You hear a louder sound, you're going to go slower.
I noticed that, but hats off to you all for that. Quindaro looks great. Just came and I saw the striping the other day, so that looks great. My only complaint is you stop where my district starts. You stopped right where my district starts, and I was just hoping that you would take it at least down to 27th Street, but
Well,
it's a
Commissioner,
small oversight.
That was the plan. Budget kind of limited us a little.
welcome to the crowd.
This is the procedure, the process that we're looking to do a lot more of this coming year.
Commissioner Philbrook.
So what was that road rated at before you did this?
Quindaro and
Made me go out and drive.
Quindaro and Metropolitan were both rated between 65 and 75.
Okay.
We'll actually be doing this process in a newer process that they've developed called pressure pave, where they actually pressurize crack sealing down into the pavement to seal it up even more on roads that are a little bit less conditioned, pretty much all the way down to 45. Coffeyville, Kansas has given them the worst roads that they had that were in mill and overlay condition. And they said, we don't have the money to mill and overlay it, do something. So they're putting these on roads that technically should get a rebuild at a 45 and getting 10 years out of the life of them.
Oh, praise the Lord. So I'll never see a road the same anymore. Every road I drive down now, I'm rating it. And I want you to know, Johnson County has some pretty cruddy roads.
They do.
Just to share. And I do appreciate you giving us that list to look at and to see how you're rating things. And I really do appreciate that. And so you're thinking that on a 50 that you can do the deep pressure injection and then this over it.
Yes.
Okay, I'm loving it. I really do appreciate your changing everything. And as again, hearing at the Kansas Association of Counties last week, this is all new stuff.
Yes.
That, that a lot of places haven't even thought about doing yet. And thank you for being ahead of the curve, really. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I just want to say, you looking at roads all the time, you're starting to sound like an engineer, so be careful.
How much, let's see, when I quit here, then maybe
There's a consultant fee out there somewhere for you, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But now you see what we do everywhere that we drive, whether our city or not, we're looking at curbs, sidewalks, ADA ramps. I know Troy and I have been driving in other cities. You're like, that ADA ramp's not compliant. That road's failing. Like, this is horrible. Why are we thinking like this? So, anybody has any questions about anything we've covered? If not, we're good.
I think that was an information-only item, but we really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We'll be back in November for our 2020 to 2024 projects and an update on the pavement preservation program and even more.
Oh, that's where our homework comes in. Okay, thank you so much. Okay, we have Mr. Droppelman back, Fire Marshal Droppelman. So this was the blue sheet. It's a grant award from FEMA for Assistance for Firefighters Grant.
That's correct. This is just information for y'all. On August 17th, we received information from FEMA. This was kind of a third time's a charm. I've tried for this grant the last 3 years, and with some meetings that I attended with Melissa through SOAR, applying some stuff there. You know, they want to know what the fire department would do about these houses that continue to get burned, and we've got tips on some of them. We just don't have the personnel to sit on them. So I wrote a grant for wireless surveillance system, and finally got it. I believe the FEMA is putting in $112,000, and the fire department's coming up with the other $5,600. So, and then we do have plans for sustainability for it through the fire department's budget, and possibly expand it to other jurisdictions if they want to be a part of it.
Appreciate your perseverance. And it's an information-only item. We appreciate you sticking around to tell us.
All right. I'm going to tell you thank you because I'm aware of some of the things you're going to use this for, and I really, really do appreciate you being so inventive and innovative.
It's a system that's used by most of the law enforcement agencies around, KBI, DEA, who we work really closely with, and actually have borrowed some of theirs from time to time. But as you all know, there's a lot of dumping grounds and areas in our city where the police can't patrol it, we can't. But with this system, we should be able to keep an eye out and hopefully prosecute some of these people.
Thank you.
All right, appreciate that. This actually concludes this meeting. Mr. Groneman, thank you so much. We'll see you next time, and we are adjourned.
Wishing to speak on any item on the standing committee agenda may do so when the item is up for discussion, with 3 minutes to state your comments. Everyone, please use your microphones, and would the clerk please call the roll?
Roll call. Philbrook.
Here.
Johnson.
Here.
Kane. Here. Bynum.
Here.
Markley.
Our first order of business is minutes from our August 27th meeting. Is there a motion for approval?
Motion to approve.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Those minutes have been approved. We have only 4 items on this agenda. Our first item is an ordinance and resolution for the inspection of public pools, and Terry Breckeisen, our Health Department Director, is here to present that item.
Thank you. I have a few people with me tonight. Roland Sachs to my left. He's the head of our Environmental Health and Air Quality Division. To my right is Julianne Van Loo. She is the head of our Health Improvement and Planning Division. And then the next person over is James Bain from the Legal Department. And so I've got the first 2 items here. And the first one is the pool ordinance. There's one small change. In line A of the pool ordinance, it states the provisions of this chapter apply only to the city. We want to change it to this chapter applies to all territory under the jurisdiction of the unified government. In other words, expanding the health department's authority to inspect the pools, apply enforcement on violations and stuff to the whole county instead of just KCK.
Other questions from the commissioners?
Move for approval.
Are there any comments from the public? All right, I have a motion and a second. Roll call on the motion.
Roll call. Philbrook.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Kane. Aye. Bynum.
Aye.
Markley.
Aye. Item number 2 is a resolution supporting the Wyandotte County Health Department's Community Health Improvement Plan.
Correct. At the end of August, we presented in this room a 45-minute program concerning the Community Health Improvement Plan for Wyandotte County, and that was in special session to all of the commissioners. What we're looking for is a resolution to, I guess, put the stamp of approval of the commissioners on the CHIP program. It will just enhance our abilities to go out and get new partners, and the government's on board, the health department's on board, the community's on board, everybody's on board, so get on board. So that's what that's what we're seeking.
Commissioners, would you like to hear that 45-minute program again?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Roll call on the motion.
Roll call. Philbrook.
Yes.
Johnson.
Aye.
Kane. Bynum.
Aye.
Markley.
Aye. Thank you all very much.
Thanks so much.
We're halfway through this one already, guys. Look at that progress. Item number 3 is an amendment to our ordinance governing alcoholic beverages, and Casey Meyer has been waiting patiently to present this item.
This will be very quick. This liquor law ordinance simply amends our current section to add or change the allowance of liquor sales to 6 a.m., which is simply consistent with state statute.
I have a motion and a second. Any comments from the public? Roll call on the motion.
Roll call. Philbrook.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Kane.
I think that was an aye.
Was Kane. Bynum.
Aye.
Markley.
I see. What happens when we're here too late is we start to get giddy. All right, item number 4, last and final item, is an ordinance regarding noise disturbance, which I personally am overjoyed to see. So bring it on.
Mike York, Deputy Chief, Casey Myers. You guys didn't know what that already. So we want to talk about changing or adopting a noise ordinance. So I've been around here for a few years, and I can tell you that we've never had, as far as I can tell, a noise ordinance to combat loud parties, loud music coming from neighborhoods. So what a typical noise disturbance would look like would be the officers are dispatched to for example, a loud noise complaint. They would go talk to that person that's responsible, and they would turn it down. So that's a typical call for service when it comes to a noise complaint, but not all people do that. So what we'd run across is this. We go to the house, we ask them to turn it down, they do, and in 30 minutes, we're dispatched again to a loud noise disturbance. We go back, we ask them again to turn it down, they do, and about an hour's time goes by, and we're back. So we get to the point where we have to ask the neighborhood to sign a complaint against their neighbor for disorderly conduct because we don't have a noise ordinance. So we convince a neighbor to sign a summons, and we arrest the subject for the disorderly conduct. Not very efficient. We've been out there 4 or 5 different times. Now a neighbor has to go to court for this noise disturbance. So in last year, we had 2,002 noise disturbances. So no report, or it was an unfounded disturbance, and that was about 1,900 of those complaints. So that's what we're dealing with. So the next slide would be, we pulled some data. Those are all the patrol districts. As you can see, 114 has the highest amount of noise disturbance complaints. That is basically Wood Avenue to the north, Ray Avenue to the south, 10th Street to the east, and 27th Street to the west. In second place there is the KU, I would say 332s, which that's the KU Rosedale area. Why that is, I'm not sure why the St. Peter's neighborhood has so many complaints. A lot of houses, a lot of people in that neighborhood. But for whatever reason, they have the most complaints. Next slide, please. So,
you give me 114 again.
For the district boundaries?
Boundaries, yeah.
Yeah, so it's...
It's me and Brian, but I just wanted to make sure.
It's Wood Avenue to the north, Ray, basically, which is the furthest southern street to the south, and 10th Street to the east, and 27th Street to the west.
Got it, thank you.
So on these arrests, as you can see, we made 7 arrests last year. That would be probably the disorderly conduct things I just described to you guys. It also could be we get there and a person has warrants and they would be arrested. So there's 7 arrests that we did for all those noise disturbances. 1,141 were no report, which means, I'm assuming that means that the officers cleared it by asking them to turn it down, and they did. So they gave them a verbal warning, basically, and they handled it without taking a report. 20 reports were taken, so I have to believe that that would be probably some type of an arrest report or incident supplement report. They documented what they did. And 791 of these calls were unfounded, which means noise disturbances are low priority calls, so we'll get to them when we can. So probably they're unfounded because they're probably an hour or 2 old and the party's broken up. So I did pull some more data when it comes to these noise disturbances. We had some repeat offenders. So so I can just give you the address. 3821 Walker had 28 calls last year for just noise disturbances. So that means the officers went out there 28 different times. That could have been 5 times in one shift. That could have been 15 times in 1 week. I'm not sure, but they went out there 38 times. Casey, go ahead.
Okay. So when it was requested that I prepare a proposed noise ordinance, I did a lot of research. First of all, our code only has 3 things that address noise. We have swimming noise, which we're requesting to repeal this because the new ordinance would address anything coming from swimming pools. And then we have section 22.124 and 22.125. Both of those ordinances we plan on leaving in the code, and they address noise from vehicles. So you have a stationary engine one, and then you have excessive noise from a car, which would have to do with a radio in a car. And that would be noise from a radio which can be heard from 50 feet. So I don't feel the need to read the proposed ordinance unless you want me to, but I can address each section to kind of explain what that section means. So A1, that's just kind of the general, it would address most situations in our community when there was an excessive noise complaint. And we included some factors that law enforcement or the judge would likely consider when evaluating something like this if somebody was issued a citation. So consideration of factors such as the sound's cause, volume, intensity, nature, and duration, as well as consideration of the time of day or night and zoning and location of where the sound can be heard. The second subsection would be the use to use, operate, or permit the use or operation of any electronic device, radio, receiving set, television, musical instrument, phonograph, or other machine or device for the producing or reproducing of sound in such a manner as to disturb the peace, quiet, and comfort of any reasonable person of normal auditory sensitivity inhabiting the area. So that would deal with more, well, it could potentially deal with residential areas, but more likely that's going to be commercial areas, places where there's businesses.
Commissioner Philbrook.
A real quick question. So does that deal with the trash trucks backing up at 6 a.m. or 5 a.m. in the morning, making a lot of noise?
Well, we included exceptions, and I think...
I haven't read it all, so...
Right, okay. So I would probably say, because that's a very limited time period and it's for a specific purpose, I would say no.
Of course you would. You're not living by it.
The third section, to operate a self-contained portable non-vehicular music or sound production device on a public space or right-of-way in such a manner as to be plainly audible at a distance of 50 feet in any direction from the operator between the hours of 7 a.m. and 10 p.m. So note that that is during regular hours of the day. And then between the hours of 10 p.m. and 7 a.m., sound from such equipment operated on a public space should not be plainly audible by any person other than the operator. That one's pretty specific.
Commissioner Kane.
We don't have too many of these here, but what happens if somebody wanted to have a rally?
They need a permit, right?
Okay, so I don't know that our code addresses rallies specifically. What we do in our code, you have to get a permit for parades, to block off the street. So included in this, we've accepted out any time, let's see here, where is that part? Did you see it? 3, sound that a person is making or causing to be made when said person has received and maintains a valid license or permit that specifically allows the sound from any department, board, or commission. So anytime anybody would get a permit or a license, that would be accepted out from this ordinance. This ordinance would not apply.
So if I wanted to have a rally, I'd have to come see you guys and get a permission slip?
That would be one way, but you know, we are mindful of time, place, and manner restrictions when it has to do with noise. Obviously, people have a First Amendment right to peaceably assemble, but the government is allowed to make specific and reasonable ordinances or laws to promote the public health and safety of its community, and this is a suggestion.
That's a very legal way of saying you can't do your rally at midnight. And you're not going to want to do your rally in a residential neighborhood anyway, right? You're going to want to do it out where people are going to see you, like in a business area, and so there's a different level there.
It would be a very organized, well-maintained, no garbage, no nothing. I mean, we do it in Topeka all the time. But you never know. We might be down here saying, hey, we don't like what our elected body's doing in Topeka. In fact, we might have some of the commissioners go out there and say something about that. So I don't want to, I'm all for this. Don't get the wrong impression. We got to have something. But if I want to have an organized rally to say I don't like what somebody did in Topeka, I want to be able to say it. And it would be, most of those rallies are like a half hour, 45 minutes at the most. and they're well-maintained, I mean, there'd be police officers, it'd be the whole shooting match, but we wouldn't be out of control either. Might be a little loud, but we wouldn't be out of control. And I just don't want to handcuff us.
I understand that concern, and a permit or a license would allow that, but also the part that would be restricted would be if you used an amplification device or a portable sound device that went into a residential area's, it says property boundary line, but really the intent of that is if someone can hear your speech with an amplification device or a radio or anything like that in their residence, then that would be addressed in this ordinance. So you obviously have your right to peaceably assemble in your free speech, but it's limited in this very narrow way. And then Section B, the prima facie violation, which addresses basically noise during sleeping times. So 8 p.m. to 7 a.m. I know some people go to bed way later than that, but I go to bed very early. Does anybody else have any questions, exceptions?
Commissioner Bynum, did you have a question?
Did I miss the penalty part?
The penalty part is right here. Violation, it's a Class C violation. So this is not an arrestable offense. This would be a ticket offense. You would get a ticket.
You could get a ticket and then another ticket and another ticket.
Absolutely. So you would get a summons, you would come to court, and the city prosecutor's office could either handle this as, you get a $100 fine, or they may do graduated fines where if you get a ticket, let's say you get 3 tickets in a night, I would hope that wouldn't happen. Your fine would be raised.
If I don't care how many tickets I get, and I just keep doing this behavior, is there a remedy after that?
Like a public nuisance? Right, you could still, community members could still try to go through the public nuisance process.
I don't understand what that means.
So does that mean someone else then would have to?
Right, well, law enforcement wouldn't be able to initiate that. That's my understanding is usually if there's a certain location that allows
would have to
a nuisance to exist, which noise can be considered a nuisance, then they can petition or request, it's my understanding, the district attorney's office to find that place to be a public nuisance, but.
Okay.
Question. I live fairly close to Piper High School. Football games get loud. Homecoming gets really loud. The parade gets pretty intense. I know we need something, but you have to be very, very careful that, I think we have the announcer for Bishop Ward over here. And I know he can hear it where he lives at if he was there. I'm not sure we're ready to tie this button up or ribbon or whatever.
That's covered in the exceptions.
Yeah.
Exceptions.
I'm still not got past my rally part. Because like I said, we've never held one here. I know we're going to hold one in Topeka, and it wouldn't be we would want to be where people could hear us, or we wouldn't do it.
Do you mean you would want to be by people's houses, or you'd want to be in an area where they're allowed?
I'd like to be on the front porch of this place, and I'm complaining about Topeka.
Yes. And when Casey talks about time, place, and manner, there's a different treatment of being in front of somebody's house versus being in front of City Hall, because people are living in the houses. People are not sleeping in City Hall, we hope. Commissioner Philbrook?
Because I haven't read this all over, and I know you know it intimately, so you got to write it. So just as a Point of information, I'm going down in this rabbit hole with Commissioner Kane. So let's say there is a rally and it's in a public location like this, but who would lodge a complaint? Would it have to be somebody call up the police and lodge a complaint? Or, that's what I'm trying to understand. Who creates the motion forward on that?
A suggestion?
So if he and I are out there out here and we're talking loud, and we have a megaphone and we're trying to get everybody going on something, and I'm sure it'll have something to do with the state if we were to do that. How would that come about? What would that look like? If we were loud or that.
I think what could happen would be if we did receive that 911 call and we're going to respond, obviously, to the call.
So it would be from somebody around here.
Yeah, it'd be from a citizen calling the police. We would respond.
Right.
Ask.
That we be more quiet.
Courteous manner to be more quiet. Because obviously, they would be told, we've had citizen complaints, and we're addressing those.
Okay, and so then you give us a ticket, if necessary, and then that ticket goes to municipal court?
Correct.
And then it's up to the judge what we get fined. Is that what you're saying?
Correct. And again, this is a proposed ordinance, so if you have suggestions on how you would like the fines to work, if you want them to be graduated, like some cities specifically graduate them, which I think that is a good idea, but that's part of the reason we're here. But just to differentiate, disorderly conducts have to be initiated by a complainant, like a victim. The noise ordinance, the police department could be the complainant if they wanted to be.
Is there another city we can compare ourselves to so we can?
Commissioner, sorry, Commissioner Bynum, we've actually looked at other cities. We're bringing forward a standard noise ordinance. The reason this is brought forward was a SOAR request. People were telling us their neighborhood was a victim of a certain corner with very loud preaching. Then when I was talking to Casey, it became clear that we actually didn't have anything on the books to address noise, which is standard protocol to help neighborhoods. So it felt like it was a good thing to bring forward to help neighborhoods with neighborhoods up that the mayor was suggesting. And it also met and addressed one of the complaints that we had folks saying we'd move out of here if we could because we're really tired of listening to this.
I would like to make a motion to approve the ordinance and encourage the commissioners to give suggestions on levels of fines to legal staff. I agree that graduated fees are probably a good idea, but I'm making a motion to approve the ordinance.
Second.
Are there any comments from the public on this item? Commissioner Kane.
Wasn't finished. I was rudely interrupted. I want the noise thing to stop. But we might want to figure out a way, and there may never be a rally here, but I don't want to come here and say we're going to have a rally and not be able to have one. So I think we need to leave us some leeway that says we will consider other options, in case that happens. Fairly simple.
How would that look, you think?
Well, I don't think it's going to happen that often, but if somebody wanted to have a rally, and let's say they wanted it by Harold's Church.
Which I do every year.
And okay, so for 1 day or 1 hour, or whatever it is, you would have amplified stuff, and then you would shut it down, because we would be shut down by the time the police officers would arrive. I mean, we're pretty quick. But I want to be able for you to do that, and for me. I mean, like the rallies in Topeka, 20, 30 minutes, and we're done. But I think we need to, if someone has a request, it would be looked at and approved by the police department or you or whoever.
I will tell you, Commissioner Kane, I just Googled the Shawnee County, the Topeka noise ordinance, and it is a match for ours. says 50 feet from the premises, building, blah, 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 no amplifying device. So I think I'm guessing they probably have a similar system. You can get a permit for any kind of rally, but it seems like their language, and you haven't gotten arrested there, it doesn't sound like. So
I guarantee you they use an amplified system.
well, that's what I'm saying. I think
I don't need one, but they do.
they're probably treating their rallies under some kind of time, place, and manner common law, but their language is the same as what we're considering the same, similar to what
we have an avenue to go down that we can explore, saying that we're going to do this on such and such a date from 1 to 3 or something like that.
Right.
You know, and like I said, I don't know if we're ever going to do it. We do 3 or 4 a year in Topeka. 20 minutes, they're done. Lots of screaming, hooting, and hollering, and there'll be more in November.
Well, is it possible to put in something separately, or do another one that allows for a permit to do something like this for a certain period of time?
That's what this says.
But does it say what the maximum noise level is?
The permit would allow you not to abide by this ordinance, right?
So
That's correct.
We can do this kind of permit thing, okay.
I'm good with that. I mean, obviously, as a preacher, I heard the word preaching and my ears went up. But also community organizing, sometimes we do have rallies for different things. And so as long as we have the ability to get a permit and not be hampered in terms of our endeavors. The other thing I was going to ask Deputy Chief York is, under this ordinance as it's proposed, what would be the process if somebody has a complaint? Somebody might be out playing noise late at nighttime. What is the process? Will they get ticketed on the first incident, or if there's a complaint?
So, right, we would respond, and the preferred method would be, and I believe we're going to train this, would be a verbal warning. And like I said, most of the time that works. But we go back out again because they didn't turn it down. After we left, they turned it back up. We would cite them. And cite them and release. We would not arrest and book.
Cite means what?
Have them sign a misdemeanor ticket.
Ticket, okay, thank you.
Melissa, do you have something to add?
Yes, and I just want to apologize. I didn't mean to cut you off. I was just trying to make sure that we all understood as a group that we actually had gone out and researched this information, because we wouldn't want to bring something forward that hadn't been tested elsewhere in this space, because it's important that we bring things that have been tested. And certainly what I would suggest is that we have staff look at the process for folks to be able to gather. That was not obviously the intent of this. It wasn't to limit rallies or public displays of frustration with their government or any other entity. So I think clearly Casey and I weren't anticipating going to rallies in front of City Hall. We were looking at neighborhoods. These ordinances are very standard. I mean, they read virtually the same in every state. So that we need to come back on something separate to make sure that you understand how to go about doing that.
And as long as we have a little avenue to make sure we can still do what we want to do, the preaching at that church.
Well, if you knew what I was talking about, I'm not referring to a preacher.
I know, but just, this thing's bigger than what we're looking at today, I promise you.
Okay. Are there any comments from the public on this item? Please come to the microphone, push that button to make the light turn green for me, and then give us your name and your city of residence.
My name is Patty Orth. I live at 316 North 15th Street. I'm also president of Cathedral Neighborhood Association. And we're in favor of this noise ordinance. Our primary problem is 18th and Central, which I'd like to thank the UG for how wonderful 18th and Central has turned out. The traffic is amazing. There's not the delay of 2-3 minutes like we've used to had. But the problem is on weekends, Saturdays and Sundays, all day long, bullhorn is used. And I live approximately 5 to 6 blocks from 18th and Central. With my window shut, I can hear this noise. This has been brought up at several of our neighborhood meetings. Is there anything we can do about this noise? It's constant. It's 8 hours constant from 18th and Central with a bullhorn. They pass it off to the next person, and it's just constant. So that's why we were in favor of this ordinance, because of that noise level. I mean, you talk about a car stereo. We have a lot of that problem in our neighborhood too, where the car stereo can be heard farther away than 50 feet, and I'm way farther away than 50 feet. And I hear this every single weekend for 8 hours on Saturdays and Sundays. So that's why we as a neighborhood are in favor of this ordinance.
Patty?
Yes, ma'am.
The bullhorn, is it a person?
It's a person at a time.
And they're on the corner at 18th and Central?
They're in the middle, sometimes in the middle of the street, sometimes mostly they're on the corner of probably be the southeast corner of 18th and Central that they talk from. And once one person stops, another one will take up.
Okay. Wow, okay, and it goes on all day?
Yes, ma'am, 2 days on weekends, Saturdays and Sundays.
Okay, wow. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments from the public?
My name is Paul Soptic. I live at 65 South 24th Street. Remember that address. Because this last Saturday, we heard a lot of thumping and I guess they called it music, right outside my door, at least I thought it was. I followed the sound and ended up at 15th and 15th just off of Pacific. I was hearing that sound at my house at 24th Street from 15th and Lowell, thank you. So that's 12 blocks as a crow flies, 14 if you bend the corner. And I could hear that sound right, just like I can hear you guys talking. So we definitely would like some help on this noise ordinance. We hear the same, I hate to say this, the preaching on 18th Street, but I get multiple calls. I'm president of Wyandotte County Against Crime, and we get call after call after call about that, the noise on 18th and Central. So we definitely need some help there. I know we meet at Dynamic Life Baptist Church, and they say they have problems with hearing that sound in the church while they're trying to hold their services. So you can tell how loud it really gets. So we definitely would like some help there. One of the things that I'm not too sharp on here is the permit. When you get a permit either for a rally or for a live music or for any type of a get together. They had one at the National Guard Armory about 3 weeks ago. We got multiple calls about the volume of music coming through there. And when the police went down there, they said they had a permit to play. Well, they did, and they kept playing, and we kept getting calls on how loud it was. I'm 7 blocks away from the Armory, and we could hear it just crystal clear in our backyard, and the wife in the house too. So anything you can do on this noise ordinance to protect that type of stuff, especially the one you can hear 12 blocks away. That's just a little much. I'd hate to be their neighbor. But anyway, we do support the noise ordinance.
Commissioner Bynum?
I just have a question. Upon approval at this level and then assuming it would be approved at the commission level, when would the ordinance be in effect?
As soon as it's published, and Henry, I don't know how long it usually takes to get published, a couple weeks. So a couple weeks after approval.
before, potentially at least before the end of this year.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I believe I have a motion and second on the table. Is that still the case? All right, from
Could
Commissioner.
we, I'm sorry, could we clarify the motion, especially the latter part of it?
The motion that I made was to approve the ordinance as it was brought forward.
And I seconded that.
Okay.
I want a little bit of wiggle room. We have, one, I want this. But if somebody wants a special request, they would have to come up and go through the process to get a permit.
Correct.
And that's all I'm asking. I'm not to modify this, just to, let's make sure we can get a permit to do it, and then everyone know what's going on.
Commissioner, the ordinance we're proposing here today already makes an exception for anybody who has a permit, and we already have a process to get a permit. So what additional language would make you comfortable? You're already, if you have a permit, you're exempted from this ordinance.
Okay?
It says that in black and white.
Yeah. I'm not getting a warm fuzzy out of the black and white.
So what do you need it to say? It already says if you have a permit, you're exempted.
Well, you know, Commissioner, if you want to argue, I can argue.
I'm
You're not a rally type person, I am.
No, you're asking us to do something, and I'm trying to clarify, what do you want us to do?
Casey, is it in there like
It's
that?
already in there.
I would just point to subsection 2. Oh, wait, is that the permit? 3, I'm sorry, subsection 3. Here's another suggestion. There is a way to get a permit or a license. If it would help, we could, I guess, delineate in our code, in our place where we can get permits and things for certain assemblies. I don't know that it's completely spelled out in our code. There is an option to get a permit, but to address your specific request, that would be something that we could address in the permit license area of the code. And then it wouldn't be in this ordinance, but it would be in that section. Okay.
So if I can ask back to the original motion, at the end of the motion, there was added something about progressive fines. Is that part of the motion? Or?
It can be. I was just making I'd like to cut off the motion at approval of this ordinance. And then I would just further comment that I personally agree with the notion of graduated fines. But legal had just asked for our suggestions on how to handle the fine side of that. So that part was just a suggestion.
So the motion is to approve as written.
Correct.
Second.
All right, I have a motion and a second. Any further comment? And a roll call.
Roll call. Philbrook.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Kane. Bynum.
Aye.
Markley.
Aye. Thank you both very much. And that is our final item. That concludes our meeting and our evening. Thanks so much.